Nagumo is a useless weakling who gets betrayed by his friends and left to die. However, after eating monsters and gaining their powers, he teamed up with a vampire princess and will do anything to get revenge.
It was delicious.
But this all begins when Nagumo wakes up alone, deep in the Orcus labyrinth. As he makes his way through, he stumbles on the Easter Bunny, who wants to eat his carrot. But before the Easter Bunny can take a bite, Bigfoot shows up and decides he'll have the rabbit for dinner. As Nagumo realizes he's next, he tries to escape. But Bigfoot notices how juicy his meat looks and launches an attack that cuts off his arm. After this, he goes after the rest of his dinner, but Nagumo uses his only skill, transmute, to escape, creating a wall of rocks between them. Having lost energy from the blood loss, he passes out, and when he wakes up, he sees a holy crystal and remembers reading about its healing properties in a book. A week earlier, Nagumo and his classmates had prepared to enter the Great Orcus Labyrinth, led by Captain Meld. When they reached the 20th floor, Amanagala, the leader of the class, rescued him, telling him there was no point in his miserable existence. After the group spotted a beautiful glance crystal, a classmate touched it and triggered a trap that transported the class to the 65th floor, which was full of monsters. As the class tried to escape, he used his transmute skill to create a wall of rocks to slow the monsters down, allowing the others to get to safety. At this moment, Captain Meld organized the class to launch an attack on the monsters, creating cover for Nagumo to escape. However, one of the magic blasts targeted him instead, blasting him right in front of the behemoth, while the floor collapsed and plunged him and the monsters below. After seeing this, Kaori was devastated and remembered how only 9 days ago she had pleaded with him not to follow them into the labyrinth, fearing he'd get his weak ass ended. However, unable to kick the main character out of the anime, she promised to protect him instead. In the present, Nagumo makes up his mind to survive and end any enemy that stands in his way, so uses his craving for meat as motivation to finally become useful, and lures a couple of demon foxes into a hole, trapping them with transmute. After sucking on their meat, he goes through a painful transformation as his hair turns white and muscles grow big. But when the pain stops, he notices his new appearance and decides to check his stats. Then he discovers his level has increased, granting him mana manipulation, mineral appraisal, iron stomach, and lightning field as new abilities. Using his mineral appraisal and mana manipulation skills, he creates a badass weapon and combines it with his lightning field to take out the Easter Bunny and eat its meat, gaining quick step, the ability to transport quickly, and aerodynamics, the ability to push off the air. Confident in his new power, he hunts down Bigfoot, hoping to eat his meat this time, but it launches an attack that he avoids easily with quick step. Then he jumps up in the air and fires his gun, but is knocked down by one of its attacks. However, he quickly launches a stun grenade, allowing him to shoot off its arm and eat it. After seeing this, it charges at him, but he takes it out with lightning field, delivering the finishing blow with a bullet to the head. After this, he decides to survive the labyrinth and go home. As he continues to eat Bigfoot, he learns that eating the same monster does not increase his stats, but he gains Spirit Claw as a new ability. Then he makes his way through the labyrinth, unaware that he's starting from the first floor, but when he gets to the second floor, he faces another monster with petrification abilities, and defeats it with his stun grenade and gun. Outside the labyrinth, the class reports to the king about their encounter with the behemoth on the 65th floor, informing him of Nagumo's loss, but the king instructs the class to keep this information to themselves. Later, Shizuku watches over Kaori, remembering how she prevented her from going to Nagumo's aid and allowed her to get knocked out by Captain Meld. Then she was outside to train and remembers how they all got into this mess. In a flashback of when they arrived at Tortoise, the Pope had told the class of a century-long war that had raged on between the humans and the demons, but the demons had taken advantage of the beastmen, giving them the upper hand in the war. Desperate for help, the god of Tortoise summoned their class, asking them to help defeat the demons, and the classmates all agreed to help the people of the kingdom despite their teacher, Aiko's objections. In the present, Shizuku suspects something is wrong as she hears Hiyama sneaking around behind her. She invites him to train with her, but he declines while acting shady. After he leaves, Shizuku realizes Hiyama always had beef with Nagumo and wonders if he might be responsible for the incident. However, she convinces herself that it can't be true and heads inside as Kaori wakes up. There she informs Kaori that she's been asleep for 5 days, and when Kaori asks where Nagumo is, she realizes the group never went back for him. Meanwhile, in the labyrinth, Nagumo continues to survive, and goes down 50 levels till he reaches a large sealed door. Unable to figure out how to open it, he tries to use transmute, which triggers the two Cyclops to awaken. But before they can fully wake up, he takes out one of them, leaving only one to deal with. Even though the monster uses defensive magic, he continues to shoot at it, backing it into a corner until he breaks through and defeats it. Meanwhile, in the kingdom, Kaori swears to become stronger so she can find Nagumo, asking Shizuku to help her on the way. In the labyrinth, Nagumo searches within the monsters and finds mana stones that serve as keys to open the door. And when the doors open, he sees a dark room with a strange magical design and a giant diamond at the end of it. He notices a girl trapped within the diamond and turns back immediately, knowing something is sus about this picture. But as he tries to leave, she tells him she was sealed down there because she had been betrayed. However, he tells her he wasn't born yesterday and that she needs to give him the tea. She then explains that she comes from a royal line of powerful vampires who locked her away for being an overpowered character, so he releases her and asks for her name. When she says she wants him to name her, he immediately turns on the Riz and names her Yue, which means moon. This makes her happy and she tries to give him some, but is suddenly interrupted when he gets stabbed in the back. He quickly uses his holy water as she helps him remove the spikes, and they turn around to see Mr. Krabs blocking the entrance. Nagumo then gives Yue something to suck on while he battles the monster, but is unable to penetrate its hard shell. So after seeing him struggle, she decides to help and sucks on him instead, giving her the energy to cast Azure Blaze. However, after just one hit, she feels exhausted, but he encourages her to give it to the monster one more time, showing her the spot to hit. Then they work together to hit the monster, finally getting it to squirt. Later, as he cooks himself some crab, he tells her that the vampires were destroyed 300 years ago, and wonders how an old hag can be a lolly. He then asks if she knows about the labyrinth, and she tells him that they were built by mavericks, who use them to escape the gods, saying they may be able to escape if they find the maverick's lair. Happy to hear this, he shows her his tool that got harder after using the crab's skin, but after seeing how big it is, she asks him if he's even human. While they go through the labyrinth together, he tells her how his classmates betrayed him for being a weak loser, and she cries for him. But he says that he's over it and only wants to go home, inviting her to come too. Meanwhile, Captain Meld tells Amanagal that he's grown stronger and encourages the team to continue training. Back in the labyrinth, Nagumo and Yui accidentally stumble into a Jurassic Park movie and figure that a monster must be controlling the dinosaurs with the flowers on their heads. As he searches for the monster behind the attack, she continues to suck on his neck, but he tells her he'd prefer if she sucked something else, so the two run into a cave alone. As they look around, he notices some green balls coming toward them and tries to block them with a wall, but she suddenly starts attacking him as a flower grows on her head. Suddenly, an ugly monster emerges and continues to force Yui to attack Nagumo until she finally lands a hit, causing a flower to grow on his head too. However, having built resistance from eating monsters, he's able to resist the mind control and shoots the flower off her head, freeing her and ending the monster. After this, he eats the monster's meat, asking Yui if she would like a bite, but she says she prefers to suck on him instead and takes off her clothes to get to work. Later, they continue to descend the labyrinth while resting and mapping out the area until they reach the 100th level and find another huge door. After entering through the doors, they find a giant room filled with glowing crystals and believe they've found the Maverick's lair, but a colorful Hydra emerges to stop them from advancing. The Hydra sends a fire blast at them and separates them, then fires an ice attack at Nagumo, which he evades, countering with shots from his gun, as Yuan casts a glacial sheet to help. However, the white head heals the rest of the body, and they figure that the different colors have different abilities, so she tries to take it out with a crimson javelin, but the yellow head blocks the attack. Suddenly, the black head sends her into a trance and tries to attack, but Nagumo gets to her in time and jumps out of the way, leaving behind a stun grenade to slow the Hydra down. Meanwhile, he wakes her up, and she's glad to see that he hasn't abandoned her and touches him, which turns him on, causing him to kiss her. As he struggles to keep it in his pants, he tells her they have to defeat the Hydra before they can get to second base, so she casts a combo attack on the Hydra, which tries to get her to fall into a trance again. But she's able to resist by thinking about how Nagumo's gonna wreck her after this. Then he launches his weapon and sends a huge blast to the Hydra, while she follows up with Heavenly Blaze, finally destroying the Hydra. Nagumo turns and sees Yui exhausted from using too much magic, but suddenly a bigger head rises behind him and blasts him as he takes the hit to protect her. She runs to his side as he collapses from the blast and drags him away as the monster continues to rain powerful attacks at them. When she finally finds cover, she gives him holy water, but he doesn't wake up, so she charges out with his gun to finish off the monster by herself, but gets hit by one of its attacks. As it is about to finish her off, he comes to her rescue, moving much faster than before, and tells her to suck him to get more energy. Then he faces the monster alone, evading its attacks and planting grenades above it, causing the ceiling to come crashing down on it, and using transmute to hold it down. Then she casts Azure Blaze, which finally defeats the monster but falls from exhaustion and rests with Nagumo. Meanwhile, the Pope talks to Aiko, who nags him about forcing the students to fight after losing a classmate, and threatens to stop helping on the farms. So he agrees not to force anyone who doesn't wish to fight, and she storms off. Back in the labyrinth, the students return to the 60th floor for the first time since losing Nagumo, and after encouraging Kaori, they decide to advance. The next day, Nagumo wakes up in bed with Yui, and when he asks how they got there, she tells him that she carried him inside the Maverick's lair, healed him with more holy water, and slept with him. Then they get dressed and explore the rest of the lair until they reach a room where they find the corpse of the Maverick. Then he steps on a magic circle that triggers a recording of the Maverick, Orcus. Orcus congratulates him on reaching the room and tells him why he chose to fight against the gods of their world. Meanwhile, the rest of the class makes it to the 65th floor, and Amanagawa and Shizuku begin to flirt while Captain Meld tells them to get a room. After reaching a familiar spot, they once again trigger the behemoth, and he tells them to create an escape route. But this time, the students are ready, and they charge at the monsters. Amanagawa strikes first with his heavenly flash, while he gives everyone orders on how to proceed. Then Hercules uses his strength to hold the bull in place so that Captain Meld can penetrate it with his sword, but he's unable to cut through. However, Shizuku sees how weak his thrust is and decides to show him how it's done, slicing off the bull's horn with one strike. Meanwhile, as Kaori supports the students with her halo magic, Amanagawa thrusts his tool into the bull and gets kicked away, but she casts a spell to protect him. And then all the students work together and defeat all the monsters. Back at the lair, Orcus informs Nagumo that he will give him his powers, but requests that he doesn't use it for evil. Nagumo suddenly feels information rushing into his head and realizes the Mavericks were actually liberators, but couldn't care less as he just wants to go home. Then he tells Yui that he's learned creation magic and can now make artifacts, so they bury the corpse and head to the workshop, where they discover that the magic circle connects to the surface, using Orcus' ring. They'd also discover a book that says that conquering other labyrinths will grant them more ancient magic, which could teach them how to return home, so they decide to stay in the lair and learn as much as they can. Later, Nagumo relaxes in the bath alone, but Yui joins him, telling him that he officially has an all-access pass to her melons and gives them to him. Within the following 2 months, he manages to practice creation magic, build a prosthetic arm, cover up his missing eye, put a ring on her finger, and is finally ready to go to the surface. Before they go, he tells her he's likely to be targeted because of his power, but they vow to protect each other and surpass the entire world. On the surface, an ugly rabbit girl gets attacked by a monster as she waits for them to rescue her. Then, Nagumo and Yui appear and are about to further the plot when the rabbit girl rushes to them, asking for their help. Furious that she cock-blocked him, he refuses to help. Then the monster returns, and he shoots it for having the nerve to roar at him. Amazed by his strength, the worthless rabbit introduces herself as Shia, begging him to save her family, so he finally agrees to hear her out, but smacks her hard for wiping her tears on him. She tells him that beautiful girls don't like it rough, but he tells her that she doesn't hold a candle to Yui. However, she says her melons are way bigger than Yui's and offer him some, but he turns away, so he doesn't anger the missus, who's about to send her to an early grave. After Shia manages to survive, she tells them she's been exiled from the Beastmen because she's the only one who can manipulate mana and even use magic to see possible futures. As he fails to see how this is his problem, he creates a power bike, getting ready to leave her in the dust, but Yui suggests that they help her so she can guide them to the great tree. So they head toward the rabbit men and help defeat the monsters, using Shia as bait to distract them. After they meet with the other beastmen and force them to accept her, Shia offers to join them on their journey, but they decline, saying her uselessness would slow them down. Then the whole worthless village begs him to help them become stronger, and he gets to work as Yue spars with Shia until she's able to land a hit. Later, Nagumo asks about Shia's progress, and Yue admits that she's freakishly strong, so she asks to accompany them. When he asks her why she wants to, she says that she's in love with him. Before Yue can send Shia to meet her maker, the other rabbit men report that they've destroyed the nearby monsters that had the nerve to try and end them, completing their transformation into a bloodthirsty village. After this, the villagers take them to the Great Tree, where they find a stone with a similar design to Orcus' labyrinth. So they insert his ring, and a message appears saying the door will only open to those with 4 symbols, the power of regeneration and a beacon formed of bonds. Unable to open the door, they decide to clear the remaining 4 labyrinths and part ways with the villagers, but Shia sticks around, remembering her mother's prediction that she would meet others like her. Determined to follow them, she reminds Yui of their agreement, and she's forced to ask Nagumo to let her come. After the trio leaves the Sea of Trees, they head back into Ricin Gorge and use a map to try and find the entrance of the next labyrinth. But Shia finds it out of dumb luck. Then they stumble on a stone tablet that welcomes them to Milady's labyrinth, just as Shia falls behind a trap door. Once inside, Milady taunts them from the stone tablet, causing her to break it with her new hammer, but the voice continues, replacing Shia as the most annoying character. The group continues through the labyrinth as she uses her new weapon to smash through all the booby traps until they reach a familiar room and realize they've been going in circles. Back in the kingdom, Yuka tells her classmates, who refuse to go back into the labyrinth, that she's planning to follow Aiko on her expedition, feeling like she has to do something to help and not just sit around. Back inside Milady's labyrinth, the group finally gets to a large door that they suspect will lead them to Milady's lair, but they have to battle through an endless army of armored suits, shooting and smashing their way through, till Shia smashes the giant door open. Then they all jump into a room with floating boxes and come face to face with a giant armored suit that claims it's Milady. But Nagumo says that's Cap, because the real Milady is dead, according to Orcus. The armored giant insists that it's her and asks them what they intend to do with ancient magic. So he explains that he was forced into their stupid world and is looking for magic that can get him back to his own. After she refuses to reveal whether she has the magic he needs, the group attacks, hoping to take out her core, but they can't deal significant damage, so she counters by raining down millions of boxes on them. The girls hold on to him as he escapes, and he distracts her while Yue sneaks behind her and cuts through her armor, but she laughs at them, saying that her armor can regenerate. He remains focused and knocks the armor down as Yue uses Freeze Coffin to keep it down. Then he drills a pin into her armor, which Shia hammers, causing her suit to break apart. Proud of how far Shia has come, Yue asks her to bend over while she rubs her, but Milady interrupts, using the last of her power to warn them about the bad guys they'll have to face, telling Nagumo that he'll become the God Killer as she disappears. Then the group moves on to the next room, only to find another Milady body that gives them gravitic magic and her ring, but tells them only Yue is powerful enough to use it if she trains hard. Nagumo insists that she must have more artifacts to give them and shakes her till all her treasure falls out. But being the bastard she is, she flushes them away before they can gather any of it. On their way through, Shia sees a talking fish and passes out, so Nagumo rescues her and gives her C-part to revive her. But she wakes up and tries to take it to third base, causing him to send her back to drown. Afterward, the trio heads to an inn, and he asks for a room for the 3 of them to share. However, Yue suggests that Shia stay in a separate room so she and Nagumo can get busy, but Shia protests, saying she wants him to develop the plot with her for the first time. The next day, the group meets with Ilwer, the head of an adventurers guild, who tells them he's been searching for them, hoping to get them to handle a mission, but Nagumo refuses to hear him out. Chang insists he hears his offer first and explains that the son of his friend, Count Kudeta, has gone missing with his party of adventurers and needs to be rescued, for which he's willing to pay handsomely. However, Nagumo still declines, so he offers to back the group if they ever get in trouble. After hearing this, Nagumo reconsiders and agrees to help if he makes them status plates and does anything they ask of him. Then the group heads out toward the mountains, but he plans to stop at Ur to get some rice. Meanwhile, at Ur, Aiko leads the farming team, including Yuka, and the remaining hero rejects, to set up the rice farms. Then they rest for the day and eat while Aiko worries about Shimizu, who has been missing for a week. The owner of the inn informs Aiko that this would be their last meal because of trouble on the mountain, but they'll be receiving guests who can help. After saying this, Nagumo, Yui, and Shia walk in, and sit at a table, and Aiko recognizes him and runs to their table to confirm if it's really him. She asks him why he looks like an isekai's main character and hasn't returned to his classmates, but he gives her evasive answers, which angers Prince Charming standing nearby. He storms to their table, calling Nagumo rude and asking why he would allow a filthy beast man to sit with him. But Nagumo finally loses his shit when the moron threatens Yui, firing a warning shot at him. The loser students can't believe their eyes and wonder how he became such an asshole, as Yuka remembers the time he saved her life in the labyrinth. After he finishes his meal, he tells everyone that they should stay out of his way or he'll end them, and he leaves with the girls, but Aiko promises not to give up on him. Later, she gets a visit from him, and he tells her why he isn't going back with her. He tells her that in ancient times there were constant wars between humans, demons, and beastmen, which were fueled by their god. So a group of liberators rose to stop him, but the god turned the people against them, earning them the title Mavericks. Because of this, they built the labyrinths so that anyone who conquered them would gain the power to defeat the evil god. However, he says he has no intention of facing the evil god, and is only clearing the labyrinths to find a way home. But just before he leaves, he tells her that one of the students shot at him intentionally, and that she should warn Kaori and the rest to watch their backs. Later that night, he sets out with the girls but finds Aiko and the other losers blocking their way, insisting they come with them. After making a deal with her to leave once she gets the information she wants, he creates a car for them to ride in, and they head out together. On the way up the mountains, she tells him that Shimizu has been missing, and he reassures her that he's probably fine as she falls asleep on his arm. Once they reach the mountain, he releases his human-locating drones to search the area, and they find some burnt remains of equipment that was left behind. So the group heads to the area, and they quickly find a giant crater and tracks left behind by a large creature. So they continue to climb up the mountain till they reach a waterfall, where they sense the presence of a human. Yui creates a way through, and they enter to find Will, who tells them he's the only survivor from a battle with the Black Dragon, feeling he's too ugly and useless to have been spared. Then Nagumo tells him to be happy he survived, and go on living in honor of the dead, while everyone wonders how he got so deep. On their way back, they hear a rumbling sound, and the Black Dragon suddenly appears and blasts them. But Nagumo forgets that this isn't the rise of a shield hero and blocks it with his shield. Then, Yui casts Heavenly Calamity, and Shia follows up with a hit from her hammer. But they're only able to stun the dragon as it begins to attack again, throwing Shia into the sea. While they attack, the dragon targets Will, offended by how ugly his face is, but Yui manages to protect him. Meanwhile, the other students try to help, but their attacks are too weak to hit. Nagumo tells Aiko to call back all the students and hide behind Yui, while he deals with the dragon alone and fires a gun that matches the power of the dragon and even overcomes it. When the dragon falls, he punches it in the gut and throws his stun grenades, but it fires a counterattack, which he evades, continuing to throw grenades at it. As it loses energy, he tosses it in the air while he summons a tool to hold it down. However, the tool is ineffective, as it breaks free, attempting to attack Will again, but Shia comes to the rescue and delivers the finishing blow. After defeating the dragon, Nagumo sticks his tool up its rice cake, causing it to wake up and plead with him to stop, but he pushes it in deeper and asks if she's a dragonborn, which she confirms, saying she would explain everything once he removes his tool from inside her. However, he drives it in deeper with each stroke, telling her to start talking, so she explains that she was mind-controlled by a mysterious man who sent her to end Will and his friends, but he doesn't buy her story until Yui confirms that dragonborns are proud and honest, and she would not be lying. She then tells them to at least spare her life long enough for her to stop the man who controlled her, claiming that he's setting up an army of monsters, but Nagumo still plans to end her since she took innocent lives. Just before he drives his tool all the way in, Yui stops him and reminds him of his one rule, so he agrees to spare her and struggles to remove his tool as she makes happy noises and transforms into her human form. She then introduces herself as Tio and informs them that the army of monsters is heading toward her, which Nagumo confirms, reporting up to 60,000 monsters in sight. Then Will asks if he can take on the monsters, but he says his only job is to return Will safely and asks who will inform the town. Tio says her mana is too dry to move, so he drags her behind him, making her happy as she likes it rough and dirty. Back in town, Aiko pleads with Nagumo to help defeat the army of monsters, so he helps the people prepare and evacuate the town, but before he goes off, he spots the mysterious man, and she tells him to return safely. While he waits for the monsters, Yuko approaches him to thank him for protecting her back in the labyrinth. But he claims it was a fluke and tells her not to die. As she leaves, Tio emerges and offers to join him on his journey, but he refuses, which only turns her on and makes her offer herself to him, promising to show him what she can do with her body in the upcoming battle. When the army is in sight, he turns to the townspeople and assures them that they cannot lose as Aiko, the goddess of plenty, is on their side and has summoned him to help defeat the monsters. The idiot townsfolk eat his words up, getting pumped for battle, even though they are about to be completely useless. Then he and she begin to fire their weapons at the army while Yui and Tio cast their spells to attack, wiping out several monsters at a go but barely putting a dent in their numbers. As the monsters continue to advance, Tio runs out of steam as her ring breaks apart and she falls asleep, while Nagumo also runs out of bullets and charges forward with Shia, hoping to find the man controlling the others and stop him. They head into their ranks and take them out one by one, ending anyone who stands in their way, till they finally find the masked man and confront him, shooting his wolf before he gets a chance to escape. Nagumo carries him back to town, where Aiko confirms that it's actually Shimizu, who wanted to show off how great he was by attacking, but Aiko concludes that this must be Boyd Math and asks him to explain what he means. Then he reveals that he made a contract with the demons to end her for being the goddess of plenty, hoping to be praised by the demons in return. However, he didn't count on any character being open enough to wipe out an army of 60,000 monsters. As she tries to talk some sense into him, he suddenly grabs her, threatening to stab her with monster poison unless Nagumo gives him all his weapons, but he refuses. So she jumps forward to save her but suddenly gets hit by an attack from a faraway monster. As Nagumo rushes to give her holy water, she tells him to attend to his teacher first, who's in pretty rough shape, so he kisses her, giving her a lot to explain at the next PTA meeting. When she comes to, she rushes to Shimizu's side, who is dying from his wounds, and tells Nagumo to give him the medicine, as he swears that he'll be loyal to him. However, he ends him with 2 bullets, saying that he doesn't give second chances and leaves. On the way back, Will asks why he ended Shimizu, who was going to die anyway, and she explains that he took the burden of his death from Aiko, so she could continue to be a good teacher. The next day, a couple of slavers find a merfolk child and plan to auction her off. Meanwhile, Nagumo returns Will to Ilwer, who fulfills his promise and gives them status plates and lodges in a room with the girls, where he keeps watch, saying he'd end anyone who comes after them. At this, Tio remembers her father's dying words to her as a kid, that their enemy is the god of their world, and one day, a being will come along with enough power to stop him. In the present, Shia gets Nagumo to take her around town, and they enter an aquarium where he meets a talking fish that he prefers over Shia. It tells them that it was brought there against its will, so they set it free, and before it leaves, it tells them about the merfolk girl who was brought in with it. Then they head back into town, and he senses a weak presence coming from below. Meanwhile, at the market, Yui tells Tio that she's comfortable with a 3-way because Shia is submissive. At the same time, Nagumo and Shia find the merfolk child near the sewers and take her back to town, where she wakes up and introduces herself as Miu. After they clean up and feed her, she tells them that she got separated from her parents and taken by the slavers who want to auction her off. After this, he plans to leave her with the city guards, but she begs to stay with them and finds out he's an asshole as he gives her away despite her crying. As they leave, they hear an explosion and head back to find that she was taken by the slavers, who left a message for him to give up Shia to keep the kids safe. However, this only excites him, as he finally has someone to shoot. He finds Yui and Tio, explains the situation, and they split up to search for her, while taking out all the slaver gangs in the town and freeing other stolen children. Then he finds her at the auction house and frees her, taking her up to a good view as they destroy all the slavers' hideouts. After he introduces her to Yui and Tio, she decides to make him her papa. Later, the group heads back to Dorad, and they meet Kilu, who finds it hard to believe the report of their time in Ur. Suddenly, Endo, his former classmate, bursts into the room to report that a demon is in the labyrinth, but quickly recognizes Nagumo and asks for his help saving his classmates. Just before this, the classmates had finally reached the 90th floor when they came across a demon who told them to join her, but they refused. So she released invisible monsters on them who attacked Shizuku and Suzu, but Kaori quickly cast a healing spell that also revealed the monsters. After this, they rushed to attack, but got their asses handed to them as the demon healed the monsters instantly. So Shizuku told Endo to sneak out and report to Captain Meld that they needed help. Then the demon asked Amanagawa to join her once more, but he refused, finally defeating a monster. However, the demon cast a cloud of smoke to end them, so Suzu cast a barrier spell to protect them, but was stabbed by a monster that appeared within the barrier. As the barrier broke, the smoke cloud advanced and turned Suzu's legs to stone, but Amanagawa blasted it away before it could reach the others. Devastated by Suzu's loss, he drops to his knees, and when Shizuku tells him to get his bitch ass up, he asks how they could run when the demon ended their friend, so she slapped him as the answer. At the same time, Endo reached Captain Meld on the 17th floor and explained the situation, but they were attacked by a monster that followed him back, so the captain sent him to warn the others above about the demon, and this brings him to the present with Nagumo and his party. However, back in the labyrinth, the classmates manage to escape from the demon, but Hiyama suggests that they surrender, which Eri seconds, saying they'll die if they keep running. Suddenly, they see a bloody Captain Meld, who tells them to do whatever it takes to survive, as the demon appears and finishes him off, but this angers Amanagawa, who prepares to use his ultimate move again. He manages to cut through the monsters and deal the demon significant damage, but can't bring himself to end her, so she takes advantage of that and summons a monster to send him flying. On the surface, Endo begs Nagumo to save his classmates, and as he hesitates, he remembers his time with Kaori, Yuka, and Aiko and makes up his mind. Back in the labyrinth, Kaori runs out of mana as she tries to save the captain, and Shizuku does all she can to hold the monsters back, but is tossed aside like a rag doll. Kaori rushes to her side, protected by Suzu, who is somehow still alive, but the monsters break through the barrier, and they prepare for the worst when suddenly a large tool penetrates the monsters and ends them as Nagumo appears in a badass entrance. As the students are shocked to see him, the rest of his party appears, and he instructs them to protect his classmates and deal with the monsters while he faces the demon, giving her a chance to run away, but she tells him that he has walked into hell. After declaring her his enemy, he grabs one of the monsters from thin air, throws it across the room, and begins to shoot all the monsters she throws at him, as his classmates watch with their jaws on the floor. He jumps in the air and throws his grenades, followed by a shower of gunfire that ends the monsters instantly. Then a giant ninja turtle sends a powerful energy blast his way, but he uses his shield to reflect it at the demon, who realizes she's come face to face with the devil himself. As he continues on his bloodthirsty rampage, Amanagawa asks Endo who the badass is, and he reveals that it's actually Nagumo, causing Hiyama to piss himself as he remembers that he shot the rogue attack on him. As he struggles to believe it's really him, Yue tells him to shut the fuck up and let Nagumo cook. Suddenly, some monsters try to attack the students, but Yue casts Dark Firmament and sucks them into a dark ball, while Shia joins in on the action and clobbers the monsters to dust. Next, Tia wipes out her share of monsters, causing the demon to send Voldemort's snake after Shizuku and Kaori. But Nagumo tosses her a sword, which she uses to make sushi. The demon then casts her ultimate move, sending the dark cloud to him, and everyone thinks he's a goner. So Miu calls out for her papa, sending Kaori into a world of rage. However, he emerges unscathed and questions her on the source of her power, figuring out that someone else had gained ancient magic from a labyrinth and given it to her. As she accepts her fate, she warns him that her lover will come to avenge her, but he promises to send him to join her. Amanagawa pleads for him to spare her life, but he ends her without a second thought, causing Hiyama to shit himself this time. Afterward, Shia reports that she's been able to heal Captain Meld as Yue rushes to Nagumo's side to further the plot, but she tells him to read the room as the other classmates approach them. Kaori then thanks him for saving them and apologizes for breaking her promise as she embraces him, enraging Yue and Shia, who struggle to share him already. As they leave the labyrinth, Amanagawa questions him, saying he didn't have to murder the demon, but Nagumo tells him that he's not a weak peep like him and takes care of his business. He then explains that he only helped them because he owed Kaori one, causing Yue to give her the death stare. On the surface, Kaori tells him she loves him and wants to stay by his side, even if it's as a side piece. So Yue asks him to allow her so she can put her in her place, but Kaori takes the challenge, believing that she can win him from an old hag. Nagumo and the others leave, telling Kaori they'll be setting out the next day. Later that night, they all relax as Amanagawa tries to stop Kaori from going, but Shizuku tells him to sit his ass down and leave her. So the next day, Kaori says her goodbyes and joins Nagumo's growing harem as they ride off. Back in the kingdom, Ishtar tells the king about the hero's return and the recent activities with the demons, while Princess Lily looks worried, but not long after, a servant announces their arrival, so she rushes to welcome them and is overjoyed to see Shizuku and the other classmates. Lily informs her that the hero rejects have been training hard since the others went down into the labyrinth, but when she asks where Kaori is, Shizuku tells her she was won over by Nagumo's large guns and no Riz, which is why Amanagawa has been sulking like a sore loser. After hearing about his tool, Lily wishes she could see it for herself, but Shizuku says he has enough baddies in his harem. At the same time, Nagumo and his crew ride through the desert, while Kaori and Yue argue about who he prefers, but Yue wins completely when she tells her about her Gok 3000 master skills. Suddenly, Tio points out giant sandworms up ahead, but notes that it's strange that they seem to be hesitating to attack their prey. However, one of the worms appears in front of them, and the horde begins to attack, so Kaori uses the distraction to practice her throat skills, but they tied her up so Nagumo can cook. Immediately, he brings out the sick weapons on his rod and fires multiple rounds, clearing the way as they see a man lying in the middle of the road. Kaori says she can't abandon him since she's a priest, so she checks to see what's wrong with him, and discovers he has mana overload, which is ending him from the inside. She casts a Santorum spell to suck out some of the excess mana. Though she warns them it's only a temporary fix, then the man wakes up, and after seeing Kaori, he thinks he's in heaven, but Nagumo steps on him and tells him to get his own bad bitch. Back in the truck, he introduces himself as Baz, son of the Duke of Ankaji, and tells them their people started collapsing from a strange fever, and a poison that causes mana overload is in their water. After hearing how fucked the town is, he agrees to lend them a hand in getting a cure from the Giran volcano. Meanwhile, in the kingdom of Garland, Freyd tells his subordinate, Michael, that their last mission failed miserably due to the presence of an irregular, who wiped out their entire army, so he plans to head to the volcano himself to acquire the power of a god, all in service to their king. After leaving Michael in charge, he heads off to find the irregulars and make them pay for disrupting their plans. When the group arrives at Ankechi, they meet with the Duke, who asks them for their help, so Shia and Kaori start to attend to the sick while the rest head outside, and Yue uses her Azure of Magic to immediately dig into the ground. Then, Nagumo lines the bottom of the hole, and she uses her tidal wave magic to supply it with water, creating a lake they can use in the meantime. But when she feels exhausted from using so much magic, she turns to her snack and takes a bite, making sure to get some action in the process while Tayo and Maya watch. After, the townsfolk show them to the oasis, and when he thinks he sees something with his demonic eye, he asks the Duke if they use any artifacts at the bottom of the oasis, but he says all the artifacts they use are on the outside. So Nagumo steps forward and throws several grenades into the water, which causes large tentacles to emerge and try to attack, but he shoots them down, while Yue and Tio handle the others, revealing a jelly-like monster with a mana crystal inside it. He shoots at the crystal, which ends up destroying the monster, but when the men check to see if the water is back to normal, they see it's still polluted. Tio assures them that since the fresh water flows out constantly, it will eventually return to its original state, so the Duke asks what could possibly have been responsible for the monster living there. So Nagumo tells him it was probably the demons, which surprises the Duke, but he thanks them for their help. They head back to town, and the Duke tells the people not to give up, since they now have clean water at Nagumo, and his team have accepted the quest to mine stillstone from the Grand Grun volcano. Kaori offers to stay and look after the patients along with Mew, so he thanks her, but when Mew asks if he's going to give it to her like he did with Yue, this triggers Kaori, who turns into the FBI with all her questions. Afterward, they head through the desert and arrive at the volcano, but when they go up, the heat starts to get to everyone except Tio, who is used to enjoying pain. When they get inside, they see the stillstone has mostly been mined from those areas, so they decide they'd have to head deep inside to get the quantity they need. As they continue in, a fire blast heads toward them, but Yue uses her spatial severance magic to swallow it, and when they see the fiery bowl that's behind the attack, he asks it if it would like to taste his tool, but Shia says she'd handle it instead and gives it to it roughly with her large hammer. After, they discover a bright room lined with all the stillstone they'd need, so they decide to clear the labyrinth before mining it and leaving. As they head deeper still, the girls get so hot that Yue starts to sound dumber than Shia, and even Tia says they need to rest. So he uses his transmute skill to make a room, and Yue uses her ice magic to help them cool off. Tio suggests that if the Orcus Labyrinth was meant to train you to fight several monsters and gain experience, and the Ryzen Labyrinth tested the ability to respond to different types of attacks, then the Gruen volcano might test how to respond to ambushes and surprise attacks. So he wonders if the tests are actually teachings from the Liberators. But he loses focus when he sees Tio's massive plots. However, he remains loyal to his flat queen. Later, they ride on a lava lake till they arrive at a dome with 100 gems lining the walls and wonder if they accidentally slipped past the Guardian. Suddenly, a fireball hurls toward them, so Tio counters with her fire blast. However, it begins to rain fireballs, and they split up to get to safety. Yue covers Nagumo as he heads toward the island, but a lava serpent suddenly emerges, and when he shoots it down, 3 more appear, causing him to retreat and regroup. He suspects they're similar to the monster back in Ankeji with mana crystals, located somewhere inside them. But when his demon eye is unable to locate them, he brings out a powerful gun and takes one down fast enough to reveal the crystal and crush it. The girls join in, and they take out all the serpents, but when they respawn, Shia points out that the same number of snakes they defeated are now broken on the dome. So the team realizes they have to defeat all 100 snakes and get to work. Tio suggests that whoever takes out the most snakes gets a reward from Nagumo, but when Yue cooks, they know they stand no chance. After Nagumo takes out the last snake, a massive energy beam comes crashing down on him, leaving him badly injured, so Yue uses her magic to catch him and carry him to safety, where she gives him some holy water, though he remains unresponsive. Suddenly, Tio tells her to look out and casts a barrier spell to shield them from a mysterious attack. Then Yue casts a barrier spell to protect them as the attacks take out the surrounding area. Suddenly, Frigid appears with a horde of dragons and says the ambush was a success, though he wonders how he survived a direct hit from one of his dragons and asks how much ancient magic he's been able to learn. Nagumo manages to get up and asks who the fuck he thinks he is, so Frigid says he's God's apostle, who plans to bring divine punishment to him. But Nagumo declares him as his enemy and decides to show him his boss. However, all their attacks are repelled by a magic shield, and Freyad uses his magic cosmic rift to teleport behind him and send another powerful blast at him that he's barely able to guard against. As the girls defend against other attacks, Tio remembers her father's last words for her to show her true self when the right time comes, while Nagumo uses his limit break technique to break away from the attack and his cross shields to protect him, while he moves closer and closer to Freyad. Freyad tries to attack, but is knocked away by Tio in her true black dragon form, which he thought was all wiped out. The 2 dragons use their dragon breath on each other, resulting in an intense battle for who's stronger, and when Freyad tries to interfere, Nagumo finally reaches him and fires a gun that is able to penetrate through his shield, then launches forward to attack, sending him flying off the dragon. Tio is able to overwhelm the white dragon, but it flies back and rejoins Freyad, while Nagumo's technique runs out of time, returning him to his badly injured state and causing him to fall toward the lava till Tio swoops in and saves him. Freyad gives him props for being able to hold his own even after being ambushed, and the sacrifice he's about to make is worth it to defeat someone this OP. Just as Nagumo asks what he's talking about, the lava begins to rise, and he tells them he destroyed the cornerstone that was keeping the volcano inactive. Nagumo then tells Tio to take his ring and escape through the roof, since she's the only one who can make it through all the obstacles, and sends word to Ankeji, assuring her that he will keep his promise to the town and beat Freyad one day. Tio flies up to escape, but she gets attacked by the dragon horde, so Yue uses her magic to suck some of the attacks away from her, while the rest of the pain she receives helps to boost her stats, allowing her to break free. Meanwhile, Princess Lily walks through the palace remembering how she tried to call out to her father, but he and his men looked like something was seriously wrong. Then she finds Shizuku training and interrupts to tell her that the castle officials and church have decided that Amanagawa needs to get much stronger to fight the demons, while Nagumo might be branded a heretic. In the forest, Hiyama laments over how Nagumo could possibly be alive when a familiar voice calls out to him, but he tells her there's no longer any reason to obey her since Nagumo is still alive. The mysterious lady continues to assure him that he can still get Kaori back from him, as long as they make a trade. Later, Tio arrives at the gates of Ankeji and transforms back to her human form, so Kaori runs up to attend to her and asks why she's the only one there. As Tio gets some rest, she brings Koori up to speed on what happened, so they remain confident they'll see him again, and decide to take Mew to Erison to reunite with her mother. Some days later, Nagumo floats on a ship in the middle of nowhere, and Yue asks him how he's doing, so he says the poison from the burning light is almost gone, and she decides he's healthy enough to ride. As things get steamy, he remembers how they narrowly escaped from the lava and were saved when a large door opened up for them. There, they stood in a magic circle and received magic that controlled space, along with a message from Grun, hoping the future of mankind would be based on free will. Yue grabs the proof of conquest he left behind, but says they wouldn't be able to use spatial magic yet since it's hard to use. So Nagumo tells them he made a ship that can swim through lava. Yue uses her barrier magic to get them into it, and they manage to make it out. They get attacked by sea creatures, and when they run out of ammo, Yue uses her magic to destroy them, but this makes her weak, and she's unable to suck Nagumo since he's in rough shape, so Shia says she can serve as her snack in the meantime. Back in the present, Yue rests from that exhausting ride, and Shia joins them, so they all find food to eat while they wonder where the hell they washed up. Suddenly, some mermen emerge, and the man begins to question them, so Nagumo smacks him aside with a fish. Then they suddenly see Mew falling from the sky with Tio and Koori beside her, so he jumps up to catch her, and the group officially reunites. Afterward, they sail to Erison, and Mew finally gets reunited with her mother, Remia, but when she sees her legs been injured, she assures her that her papa would help her and turns to Nagumo, while the other mermen argue over who's her papa, and figure Remia must belong to the streets. They head inside and Koori begins to heal her, but she says she'd need a few more days to do it properly, so Remia thanks them for all their help but asks why Mew calls him papa. He explains the story, and she tells them they're welcome to stay in her house while they're in town, especially for Mew's sake, even offering to make him Mew's real papa if he's down, but he tells her he doesn't do single moms. Back in the kingdom, Shizuku stumbles into Aiko, and they catch up on what's been going on, so Shizuku asks how she managed to recover from almost dying, but Aiko starts acting sus, and Shizuku suspects that Nagumo rizzed her up as well. Then Aiko confirms that Nagumo has been branded a heretic, despite her objections and his acts at She suspects something fishy might be going on and mentions that all the officials seemed off, so she tells Shizuku that she needs to speak to the whole class about something important Nagumo told her. Some days later, they leave Erison for the ruins of the Melusine Labyrinth, and Nagumo spends night and day searching for it. One day, Koori tries to get some alone time with him as they enjoy a beautiful sunset, but Yue appears, not willing to let her man slip through her fingers, and the other girls join them. Later, he gets an idea and holds the proof of conquest from the previous labyrinth up, which fills it with moonlight and creates a beam of light that points the way. They head into the ship and follow the ray of light till a wall opens up and sucks them into it, causing them to lose their balance for a bit. But when the ship stabilizes, he notices a red and black magic power, so he launches his new weapons at it, and they appear to be effective, allowing them to continue till they reach another magic circle. There, he holds up the artifact, and it unlocks the gate into an area that finally isn't covered with water, so they get off the ship. They head inside and face a couple of monsters, which he says are all embarrassingly weak for labyrinth standards, but he eats those words when they come across a purple gooey monster that Shia's smash has no effect on. Yue sets up a barrier spell, and Tio tries her fire magic, but Yue points out that the jelly seems to melt magic, just as the jelly starts to take shape. Nagumo and Shia shoot at it, but their attacks have no effect on it, so Koori takes over shield duty, and Yue and Tio join in to attack, but nothing works, and it continues to surround them. He notices a space in the ground, and makes it wider so they manage to escape underwater, but the current pulls them in separate directions, and when he has to choose between Yue and Koori, he picks the one with the larger rack. Later, they arrive at a beach alone, and when she asks him why he chose her, he says Yue can take care of herself, unlike her weak ass, and since the missus okayed it, he chose to save her. This makes her jealous of how much he trusts her, but he tells her to suck it up and remember they're still inside a labyrinth. They continue to walk forward till they reach a creepy warship wreckage and suddenly find themselves in the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. He figures the illusions can be stopped by attacks infused with magic, and they manage to stop the attacks but soon find themselves surrounded by the crew, who says they defeat them for their god Ehit. They jump up and try to figure out what to do, so she suggests that defeating all the ships might end the war, and he gets down to business. Afterward, she asks what the fuck that was about, and he says it was probably a recreation of a war that happened in the past, and the concept of the labyrinth might be to show the tragedy the crazed god can bring about. When she thinks about all the lives lost, she gets sick and apologizes for her reaction, but he says he's not bothered since he's been to hell and back but was able to make it through thanks to Yue. This makes her jealous again, so he reminds her that he loves Yue, and if that bothers her, then she shouldn't be around him. Meanwhile, in the kingdom, Aiko is on her way to meet with the students when a woman in a nun outfit stops her and tries to brainwash her into going to Divine Mountain. But when Aiko resists, she resorts to a gut punch and tells her she wouldn't end her, but needs her as a useful pawn, all while Lely overhears everything. Back in the labyrinth, Nagumo tells her she needs to decide why she followed him and it's a good idea to stay. Afterward, they head to another ship, and when they hop on board, another illusion begins, and they see a party with humans, demons, and beastmen getting along when the king appears and makes a speech about the success of their peace treaty. However, he suddenly switches up and tells them they can never be on equal footing with humans. Then he leads an ambush in the name of their god, slaughtering all the guests while he goes inside, followed by a mysterious masked woman. The illusion ends, and Kaori wonders why it ended before they did anything. So he suggests that the point might be to get them to look around. As they search inside the ship, he comments that the king's actions seem strange, and he shouldn't have been able to gather that much respect if he was truly hiding such hatred for the other races. Suddenly, a strange mist appears, and he catches a string that triggers some booby traps which he destroys instantly. But Kaori gets blown away by a strong wind, leaving him in the middle of an ambush. After showing them why he's the main character, he turns back to look for Kaori, and when he finds her, he puts a gun to her head and shoots. She comes to and asks why he did that, but he tells her to cut the crap since he can tell Kaori's body has been taken over. That she asks him how he can hurt someone he cares about, but he says the magic ammunition only hurts the thing possessing her and fires another shot. He tells her that if she stays, he'll continue to show her hell without letting her die, and when she sees the murderous aura around him, she finally gives up and disappears. He leans in close to make sure she's okay, and when she comes to, she plants one on him and tells him that she's decided to stay with him, even if she'll always be inferior to Yue, making her the ultimate simp. Afterward, they reach the end of the dungeon, and he says that was a piece of cake compared to the other labyrinths, but she reminds him that it would have been tough for the people of this world with strong fates to witness all of the god-caused chaos. The rest of the team shows up, and Tio teases him about his alone time with Kaori, making him smack her till her buns become steamy. Then the simp brags about the kiss she shared with him, telling Yue that she's not backing down, so she welcomes the challenge. They step into the magic circle and gain the power of restoration, along with the proof of conquest, but the water suddenly starts rising, so Yue uses spatial magic to transport them, but they end up surrounded by water again, as the jelly monster reappears and attacks. While Yue holds it off, Nagumo begins to create a new weapon to defeat it, but before he can finish, it tries to swallow them whole, making them think they are goners till a swarm of fish holds it back, and the fish Chikachet tells him he came to help. Thanks to the extra time, Nagumo finishes up and launches the missiles, which finally defeat the monster and cause a huge explosion. Back in the kingdom, the students discuss how strange it is that Aiko isn't back from Divine Mountain, and Shizuku notes that Lally isn't back either. Captain Meld shows up, and they air their concerns about Aiko and several other students who have gone missing, so he tells them they're also investigating the case. Meanwhile, at Divine Mountain, Aiko is held captive, while the nun says that she has become an inconvenience to her lord's game. Some days later in Arisen, Miu wakes Nagumo up and asks why he and Yue are always naked, and when Yue tells her she'll understand when she grows up. She points out Nagumo's special growth and asks whether that's why he understands, so he grabs her and tries to explain when the girls walk in just in time and tell them breakfast is ready. While they eat, Nagumo thinks about how they'll have to leave soon, but doesn't know how to break it to Miu. Then they head out for a fun day by the water, and the girls play tag with her, while he sits alone still trying to figure out what to do. During the game, Miu jumps in the water and uses a big splash to steal Shia's bikini top, leaving her plots exposed while Remia swims up to Nagumo and thanks him for trying to keep Miu happy, but tells him that he should do what she needs to do since Miu has grown so much and can handle it. He agrees and plans to tell her they're leaving the next day, so Renia says they'll make a feast that night. Then she moves between his legs and calls him darling, and like clockwork, Yuet appears, ready to cook a fish, and Kaori laments how she can't catch a break, while Miu asks him if he wants Shia's bikini top, which makes Shia think Nagumo put her up to it. So Yuet offers him hers, and the other girls follow suit, till he's covered in every boy's wet dream. Later, he finally breaks the news to Miu, who tells him that one day she'll find him, so he promises to come back for her once everything is over and show her where he grew up. That evening, the girls are surprised at his decision to take her to Japan with them, and he says that even if he isn't able to take her back before they go, he'll do whatever it takes to cross back until he's able to make it happen. The next morning, Miu hands them identical charms to send them off, and they all say their goodbyes and leave Erison. Back in the kingdom, Lily runs around the alleyways remembering what she saw the other day and wondering who she can possibly trust. Meanwhile, a brainwashed army is addressed by a hidden woman saying the time has come, with Hiyama standing nearby, while Aiko demands to know what they plan to do to her students while she's locked up. But the nun lady walks off, so she places her hope in Nagumo. At the same time, Freyad says the demon lord has issued his decree, so he leads his forces forward to attack the humans of the north. Meanwhile, Captain Meld ponders over the void that seems to be taking over all the magic knights and soldiers. So Josie approaches him to give a report that 30% of their forces seem to be affected, but he wonders if it's really an attack or them just being unfocused. Meld tells him to be on guard so he doesn't get affected too, and comments that the king doesn't seem to be affected and is rather excited to deal with the demons, so he sends Josie off to gather anyone with knowledge of dark magic to investigate the void and deal with it. Later, as he sits in his office, he wonders why he hasn't been targeted, if this is really an attack on the palace, so he prepares letters for the Duke of Ankeji and Nagumo, should anything happen to him. Suddenly, he hears a knock, and Iyama says he has something important to tell him, so Mo lets him in and asks what's wrong. But he just sits there quietly till they hear another knock on the door, and it's Jose with another report. However, when he opens the door, Josie immediately tries to attack, clearly being taken over by the void, but Meld manages to evade his attacks. Then he notices Hiyama and starts to walk over to attack, but Meld jumps in front of him to hold Josie off and suddenly gets stabbed in the back by Hiyama. He uses a wind spell to blow them all across the room, but when he heads toward Hiyama, two more magic knights come to his aid and charge at him with Hiyama's help, but he takes them all out, showing Nagumo is not the only badass. Then he crosses swords with Jose, disappointed he got taken over, but knocks him flat on his ass. Hiyama's surprised to see Captain Meld has been useful this whole time, but the fallen soldiers rise up again, and he says even death can't stop them. As more knights come in and surround him, he decides to fuck this shit and jump out of the window, but he comes face to face with an angel, and when she stretches out her hand, everything goes white. Afterward, the mystery woman picks up the letters Meld left behind, then asks Hiyama where the angel chick went, so he tells her she left, saying they were half-baked, but she says it was all part of her plan, and this proves she has the blessing of God. The next day, as Nagumo drives through the area, he sees bandits surrounding some people within a barrier spell, but when the barrier starts to disintegrate, Kaori begs him to help them, so he steps on the gas and brings out his weapons to take them out. When they arrive, Kaori rushes to heal the injured while Nagumo continues to take out the bandits. Then Lily runs up to her, and she's happy to see her. As they catch up, Nagumo walks up to them, and Lily's glad she finally got to see his tool up close, but he doesn't even recognize who she is, so Kaori tells him she's the princess. Afterward, she rides in the van with them and tells them about the brainwashing at the palace and Aiko's kidnapping. That explains that she was hoping to find help and had boarded a caravan to go see Duke Senjin for help, but was happy to run into them. Nagumo says they first have to rescue Aiko and points out that Divine Mountain is also a labyrinth and wonders what kind of ancient magic he can get there. Meanwhile, in her cell, Aiko wonders who they're plotting against, and she figures it might be Nagumo, just as he appears outside her window and busts in. When he tells her he came to rescue her, she gets flustered. Then he leans in and grabs her, but when she reminds him they can't because she's his teacher, he tells her he was just trying to remove the chains and should get her mind out of the gutter. So she asks him how he knew where she was, and he tells her about what Lally saw, which shows her that he cared that much, so she thanks him for saving her back at Ur, but warns him to be careful now that he's been branded a heretic. Suddenly he hears a sound and gets word that the demons are attacking, so he tells her to meet up with the Managoa and the rest, but a bright light suddenly appears, so he grabs her, and they see that the mountaintop has been completely disintegrated by the angel, who calls herself Noint and claims she's God's apostle. The rest of the gang heads toward Shizuku's room when the windows suddenly break apart, and Lily sees that the Great Barrier has been destroyed, leaving the kingdom vulnerable. Then Tio radios in and tells them that the demons have invaded the kingdom and the White Dragon's breath broke the barrier. So Yue suggests that they split up with Koori and Lily going to find the students while she and Shia go and make Fredid pay for hurting Nagumo. So they leave and meet up with Tio at the bell tower and ask where the proud bastard is, but Nagumo radios in and tells Tio he needs her to take Aiko to safety immediately, so she flies off. Suddenly, Shia gets a premonition and warns Yue while an attack suddenly appears and incinerates the bell tower, but they escape in time and Fred shows up with his forces. He sends another dragon blast their way, but Yue uses the same spatial magic to send it back at them, incinerating half his forces. Then she signals for him to bring it on. Because of this, he tells his forces they'd need to split up with Michael facing Shia and him focusing on Yue, so they don't get to collaborate. So Michael attacks Shia, and they end up transported to a separate location, where he tells her that he intends to avenge his betrothed, who they defeated in the Orcus Labyrinth, but Shia tells him she doesn't really care, and no one should be fighting if they don't want to die. This angers him, so they rain down energy blasts at her, but she evades them easily and whacks them with her hammer, so he warns his forces not to attack in close range, which makes her summon Miley's wrecking ball and begins to knock them out. Then they pierce her with stone needles, and just as she begins to petrify, she uses her quasi-restoration magic to return to normal, then wraps around him with her chain and smashes him into the ground, ending the one-sided beating. Back on Yue's end, Fred attacks with his volley fire, but she absorbs them with her magic, then summons a lightning dragon, but that gets absorbed by another ninja turtle, so Fred tells her that as long as he has turtle power, her magic will be nullified. However, Yue says bitch please, and summons 5 lightning dragons which incinerate the turtle along with half his forces. So Fred casts a magic spell that pretty much acts like an atomic bomb and wipes everything out except Yue. But when she's distracted, his dragon stabs her. However, she chuckles and goes into demon mode, using a revival reversal spell to restore the injury Nagumo inflicted on him in the labyrinth, weakening him severely, so his men cover for him while he escapes with spatial magic. Then Shia joins her and asks if how things are going, but she tells her he got away. Meanwhile, Noint continues to attack Nagumo, who stays on the defensive since he's carrying Aiko, so she charges in with her sword, blocking his shots and swings at him, but he evades and attacks with his cross shields. Then she commends him for being able to defend herself with the dead weight and acknowledges him as too strong, but says that's why he's not fit to be a pawn for their god. Then she fires a magic blast at him, but he uses his tools to create a barrier that protects them, but soon starts to hear chanting from the church, which generates magic that weakens others. So Nagumo asks her why she's focusing on him instead of defeating the demons, who could destroy the kingdom, and when she says so be it, he points out that it is just using the humans as pawns, and he might even be the same god backing the demons, but she doesn't seem bothered by this. So he asks why they don't just send him to his world if he's in their way, but she says that Iet would prefer for him to die on his way to reaching his goals for his entertainment. She then sends another powerful attack which finally shatters the barrier, but Tio arrives just in time and blasts her away, then he hands Aiko to her, and she carries her to safety. On the way, Tio tells her that she has to deal with the church and needs to drop her off, but Aiko offers to help, revealing that her magic is actually on par with the Manigawa's, and she'd like to help. Meanwhile, Noint continues to give Nagumo a hard time as he notices her magic power doesn't seem to be decreasing, while his limit break technique has a time limit. But he continues to attack with all he's got and draws her in for a close Rongi attack, but only manages to put a few scratches on her, while he's badly injured and exhausted. However, he pulls out 2 spatial rings and uses them to transport his attacks at her, which finally break apart her swords. Then he holds her in place while he powers up his ultimate tool, which no one has been able to survive, and tries to force it into her, and though she tries to resist, he finally gets it in and defeats her. After, he hears an explosion and rushes to find out the cause, but when he gets there, he sees Tio and Aiko have accidentally blown up the entire church, ending everyone on site instantly. When Aiko realizes what she's done, she struggles to come to terms with it, and he comforts her, but Tio soon points out the presence of a glowing man who's trying to get their attention. They follow him, and he leads them to a magic circle, making Naguma wonder if this is also a labyrinth. Then they get transported to another room, where they receive magic that can manipulate a person's soul, which he figures is the same kind Milady used to keep her soul in a golem. Then he walks forward and reads that the requirement to defeat the labyrinth was to defeat 2 other labyrinths, have absolutely no faith in the god, and defeat an effect powered by God. So he grabs the ring, and Aiko reminds him that they have to go help out since the capital is under attack. At the same time, Shizuku hears a strange noise and gets out of bed to check what it is. Then she sees some other students out of bed, and they wake everyone up to investigate. Suddenly, Nia runs up and informs them that the demons are invading. So Amanigawa suggests that they buy time for the people to evacuate. But Eri suggests that they meet up with the rest of the Magic Knights first, and Suzu and Shizuku agree. So Nia leads them to where the Magic Knights are gathered, but the students can tell that something's off. Then Jose addresses the Knights and brings out an orb to signal the beginning of the war. But when he activates it, it creates a blinding light that blinds the students while the Knights attack, leaving only Shizuku standing. The mystery woman appears and says she isn't surprised that she'd be left standing just as Nia runs up to her asking for help. But when she embraces her, Nia stabs her in the back, and the mystery woman turns out to be Eri. After the students are tied up, and Eri chains up Amanigawa and kisses him, that reveals that she's so down bad for him that this entire plot has been to get him to be hers. So Shizuku asks what she did to the others, and she tells them they're all dead, and she used a special type of necromancy to bind their souls to hers. They refuse to believe she'd do such a thing, so she uses a classmate to demonstrate and brings him back right in front of them. Suzu asks how she could do such a thing, but Eri thanks her for being stupid enough to help her get this far. Then she turns to Shizuku and tells her she intends to use her to take out Kaori. So she grabs a sword, and just before she can plunge into her, a barrier protects her and Eri gets knocked away while Kaori stands at the entrance casting her spells while Lily keeps up a barrier. A Magic Knight tries to attack from behind, but Hiyama shows up and takes him down. So Lily turns to him for help, but he knocks her out, stabs Kaori, and says he's finally got her. Kaori still manages to cast a spell that heals all the students and begins to heal herself too, but Hiyama thrusts the sword back into her, causing her light to go out. Now healed, Amanigawa breaks out of his restraints and goes to town with the Magic Knight, and the other students join in to help. But when he tries to attack Eri, Captain Meld stops him, and he's forced to fight him but suddenly begins to feel weak. Suddenly he hurls blood, and Eri reveals that she slipped him some poison with that kiss. But it's not lethal, since she'd prefer to end him with her own hands. Next, she turns to Kaori and begins to recite her soul-binding spell, but before she can complete it, Naguma shows up and asks what the fuck is going on. He teleports to Kaori's side and tosses Hiyama out of the way, then hands Kaori over to Tio and Aiko to work on. But Eri says it's no use since she's already dead, so tries to make a deal with him while a Magic Knight attacks him from behind, but he shoots his head off without turning. Next, she sends Captain Meld after him, but Nagumo stops his sword with just 2 fingers, and when he realizes that Meld is begging him to put them out of their misery, he shoots him down, then whips out a machine gun and takes out the rest of the Magic Knights. When the dust settles, he puts the gun to Eri's head and asks for her last words, but before he can pull the trigger, a fireball comes at him, which he takes out, followed by Hiyama, who tries to attack while screaming at him, but Nagumo slams him into the floor and tells him to shut his bitch ass up. He holds him by his neck, while Hiyama cries and blames him for everything. Then he kicks his whiny ass out into the horde of monsters gathering around the building. Tio tells him they've been able to attach her soul, but need Yue's help to go any further. Then Fredhead shows up and tells him to surrender since they're completely surrounded. But Nagumo calmly summons a device that creates a huge energy blast, which takes out everything outside the walls instantly, then tells him to get out of his sight. Fredhead swears to get revenge for this disgraceful L and leaves with Eri by his side, while Yue and Shia finally arrive, and they follow Tio to try and help Kaori as Nagumo assures Shizuku that they'll definitely bring her back. Some days later, Lily reads a report explaining how Eri used her necromancy skills to control the female demon from the labyrinth and contact the demons to make a deal to access the kingdom in exchange for Amanigawa. Also, the brainwashing and murder of the king were discovered to be the work of the nun, who is currently missing, so Lily visits the tributes to the fallen. At the same time, the girls continue to work on Kaori, and Yue tells Nagumo that Aiko took a break and advises him to go to her, so he finds her. and she confesses that she's sad that any of her students had to die, so he offers her his back to cry on. Later, Amanagawa and Shizuku finish sparring, and when Lily checks in to see how they're doing, he tells her she's been waiting for Nagumo, but he doesn't fully trust him. Suddenly, Nagumo and the rest fall from the sky, and when Shizuku asks where Kaori is, he warns her that she looks a bit different. Then she lands in Noit's body, and Shizuku embraces her. When they ask what happened to her own body, she explains that she wanted to be stronger, so they repaired Noit's body and put her soul inside, while her body is suspended in magic for when she chooses to go back. So Shizuku thanks him for all his help and promises to do whatever it takes to pay him back. Afterward, he tells them the truth about the god of this world, which upsets Amanagawa, who intends to fight the god, but when Nagumo tells him he doesn't intend to fight for people he doesn't know, he tells Amanagawa to become strong and protect them himself. Later, the group has a dinner in the palace, and the students come in to join them and ask where they're heading next. And when he mentions the labyrinth he'd be going to, Lily asks if she can tag along as she'd like to go to the imperial capital to discuss with the emperor. So he says he doesn't mind but has no intention of going to the capital. So Amanagawa suggests he goes along to protect her and asks him to show him how to get ancient magic so he can be stronger. After hearing this, all the students plan to follow along in hopes of getting stronger, so he tells them they leave at dawn, which makes them excited. After the girls offer to feed Nagumo from their spoons, and he decides to indulge them for once, causing Tio to get off from the spoon he used. Then she asks him to reward her for saving Aiko, and tells him to stick his tool in her rear, just like he did the first time they met. This annoys him, so he decides to bring out his longer, harder tool and tells her to brace herself, but she tries to chicken out when she sees how large it is. The next morning, the group waits outside while the students and Lily join up with them, and they bid Aiko, and the hero rejects goodbye. On the way to the Haltsina Sea of Trees to conquer the next labyrinth, Nagumo and the others discuss the Holshire Empire. Lily hopes to speak with the Emperor to help the Highlight Kingdom because they took a lot of damage when the demons attacked. She feels uncomfortable with this discussion because the Empire is famous for taking beastmen as slaves. She herself almost became a slave before she met Yui and Nagumo, and she tells Lily and the others about how she and some of her family and friends were chased by the Imperial soldiers. Most of her kin died while the others were taken to the Empire as slaves, and the worst part of it was that monsters came and attacked the survivors. She blames herself for what happened, but her friends tell her not to do that as it is the Empire that is to blame for being a country filled with lazy good-for-nothing bums. Lily offers to find out what happened to Shia's kin that was taken, but Amanagawa, who seems to think he's the next King Arthur, speaks up and declares that he wants to save the beastmen. He implores Nagumo to put his plans of conquering the labyrinth on hold, so they go to the Empire and convince the Emperor to release the beastmen. Nagumo refuses as he doesn't think it's wise for them to stick their noses in what doesn't concern them. However, he tells Amanagawa that if he wants to play Superman, he can. This pisses Amanagawa off, but he says nothing and walks out of the control room with a sad expression. Shizuku finds him staring at the clouds in the hallway, so he expresses his annoyance at Nagumo's refusal to help the enslaved beastmen. He tells Shizuku that he doesn't understand Nagumo's refusal to help the people of that world, even though he knows the truth about their god. Shizuku explains to Amanagawa that even though Nagumo acts as self-centered and selfish as Tanya the Evil, he is a good person. She reminds him that Nagumo was a weak and pathetic loser, who solo-leveled his way out of a life-threatening training arc after getting betrayed. Therefore, he shouldn't be angered when Nagumo refuses to lift a finger to help people. Still, Amanagawa tries to argue that those with power ought to help others, but before he can finish his argument, he notices that the airship changed course. Immediately, he and Shizuku return to the control room and ask the others why they changed course. Kaori explains that they noticed some beastmen were being chased by Imperial soldiers, and Lily adds that they intended to capture them as slaves. As expected, Amanagawa says they must save them, but when Nagumo fails to respond, he declares that he will do it himself. Nagumo tells him to slow his roll and think in slow-mo for a bit before asking Shia if the rabbit beastman being chased looks familiar. Shia looks closely at the original Playboy bunnies and her face lights up in recognition as the duo being chased are none other than Lena and Mina. When the girls collapse on the ground from exhaustion, Amanagawa panics, but Nagumo tells him not to worry. This makes Amanagawa complain and say they can't leave the girls alone as they are frail and unable to protect themselves. Nagumo tells him that the girls are far from being frail because they are part of the Halia tribe, which confuses Amanogawa more. Suddenly, he noticed that a few of the soldiers that had been chasing the girls were lying dead on the ground. Everyone except for Nagumo, Yui, and Shia is shocked, so Nagumo explains that the girls had lured the clueless soldiers into a trap. The group continues watching as the girls who were shaking in fear a few seconds ago got up and began slaughtering the remaining soldiers. Surprised, Lully asks if all rabbit beastmen are a part of the Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, and Shia says no. She explains that Lana and Mina are that way because Nagumo trained them, causing Lily and the others to stare at Nagumo like he is Shu Tucker. As the fight continues, Lana and Mina are joined by other rabbit beastmen who help them take down the remaining soldiers. While one of the girls is checking to see if the soldier she shot is dead, an injured soldier tries to take her out with magic. Par notices this and tries to stop him, but Nagumo fires his cannon from the ship before he can and disintegrates the soldier. The beastmen aren't surprised by this and turn their faces upward to salute Nagumo. On the airship, Suzu asks Nagumo how he knew what the soldier was planning to do. Nagumo explains that combining his observation haki and his low-budget Sharingan eye allows him to detect whenever magic is used. Upon hearing this, the flat-chested lolly and muscle-brained idiot Ryutaro begin to tease Nagumo, saying they thought he wore an eye patch because he deluded himself into thinking he was Nick Fury. Annoyed, Nagumo pulled out his gun and chased them. Eventually, he landed the ship and approached the Halias with Yui and Shie. The beastmen were happy to see Nagumo and expressed their gratitude for the help he rendered to them. Nagumo commends them for their skills and then asks why they are fighting Imperial soldiers. Par, who now wishes to be called Baltfield the Executioner for a reason best known to him, tells Nagumo that he will explain everything elsewhere, so Nagumo brings them onto his ship. There, Baltfield explains that they left the forest because they needed to restock their supply of weapons after their battle with the demons. Unfortunately, the Imperial soldiers attacked their settlements to capture them as slaves because they needed to rebuild the Imperial capital that now resembles the aftermath of the Avengers saving the world. They inform Nagumo and the others that their chief took a few skilled warriors to retrieve their kin. However, they lost all communication with them when they breached the city. That is why they ventured out of their settlement, hoping to find clues that would lead them to their chief. Instead, they discovered a carriage full of slaves and decided to save them. Yui notices that Shia looks sad after learning that her father is missing, so she signals Nagumo. Nagumo then asks the beastmen if they would like to accompany them to the Empire. The beastmen say yes, but Shia opposes and begs Nagumo to prioritize the labyrinth. She tries to act like she's not worried about her father, but Nagumo reads her like a book and tells her that she doesn't have to pretend. He places his hands on her cheeks and encourages her to be honest about her feelings, so she admits that she's worried that her family is in danger. A few hours later, Nagumo and the others stroll through the Imperial city and note the destruction the demons caused. They'd also witness a slave about to be whipped for tripping over rocks, so Amanogawa tries to intervene. However, Nagumo disarms the guard with his powers before he can and tells Amanogawa not to draw attention to them. This annoys Amanogawa, and he calls Nagumo a hypocrite for only caring about Shia's family's plight and not the plight of the other beastmen. Nagumo doesn't deny the accusation and boldly states that Shia is special to him, unlike the other irrelevant NPC beastmen. After that, the group goes around the city asking questions about Shia's family. By evening, they have gathered enough intel to know that Shia's family was captured and taken to the castle after they went on a rampage in the city. Nagumo decides to do further investigations with only Yui, and when he tells the others, they voice their disapproval. The dirty-minded idiots he has on his team complain that he's only going with Yui because he wants to show her his skills as a two-pump chump. Nagumo tells them to get their minds out of the gutter and explains that he wants Yui to accompany him because she's the only one who wouldn't discard her lunch when he has to torture someone. This calms them down, and then he leaves with Yui to continue investigating. Later, they'd all meet at an inn, and while they have dinner, Nagumo tells them he has gotten enough intel. He says they will break into the castle and help Shia's family escape. However, Amanogawa proposes they ask Lely to speak with the Emperor to release Shia's family since she's at the castle. Nagumo tells him that getting Lily involved would affect her diplomatic mission. He reminds him that Cam and the others entered the city illegally and slaughtered many soldiers, so asking Lily to get involved would put her in the Emperor's bad books. When he sees the dejected look on Amanogawa's face, Nagumo asks if he wants to help them with the mission. Determined to prove he's not as useless as Sakura, Amanogawa excitedly tells Nagumo he will do anything to help. Nagumo says he needs him and his party to act as a diversion while he breaks into the castle with Yui, and she at Amanogawa readily agrees that his party will act as the Shaggy and Scabby of the group, but starts reconsidering his decision when he sees the masks Nagumo created. He tries to refuse to wear the mask, but Nagumo convinces him and the others that their reputation won't be harmed while they are cosplaying as low-budget Power Rangers. A few hours later, the imprisoned rabbit beastmen discussed how their chief was probably frustrating the efforts of the Imperial soldiers interrogating him. They were sure that he would be returned to his cell with new injuries, and one of them pointed out that the chief's recent behavior reminded him of Nagumo. The others agree with him, but say if Nagumo was the one imprisoned, he would have destroyed the place and left a long time ago. Just as they begin to compare Nagumo to a destroyer god, he appears in the prison with Yui and Shia. When the beastmen hear his voice, they become shocked and wonder if their minds are playing tricks on them. However, they realize it isn't so when Nagumo unlocks their cells and they see him. Meanwhile, the rip-off Power Rangers were outside the castle, causing a ruckus and making fools of themselves, all in the name of creating a diversion Nagumo never actually needed. Back in the prison, Nagumo and the girls locate Cam, who despite being injured has succeeded in tormenting his tormentors. The frustrated soldiers were about to leave the interrogation room when Nagumo put match bullet holes in their heads. Cam was surprised to see Nagumo and the girls, but Nagumo assured him everything was fine and released him. They join the rest of the Holias outside the city, and while they celebrate their reunion, Shizuku tries to punish Nagumo for making her embarrass herself as the Pink Ranger. Nagumo easily defends against her attack, but before things can escalate, Cam approaches Nagumo, saying he has something to say to him. Nagumo gives him his ear, so Cam and the other members of the Holia tribe knelt before Nagumo. Cam tells him that he and the rest of his tribe have decided to declare war on the Empire, which surprises Chie. She immediately disagrees with their plans as she believes it is nothing more than a suicide mission, and even threatens to beat some sense into them if they insist on carrying out their plan. Nagumo calms her down by stroking her pulling her tail, and tells her to listen before flying off the handle. He then asks Cam why he wants to declare war on a military empire that can wipe out their clan in the blink of an eye. Cam explains that they were interrogated daily while in captivity as the Emperor was interested in knowing how they became strong. He says the Emperor intends to continue capturing rabbit beastmen and keep them as pets, and if he were to storm Verbergen, the other clans would gladly give up all the rabbit beastmen in exchange for their freedom. This is why they want to prevent that by attacking the Empire and assassinating those around the Emperor until he agrees to leave the beastmen alone. Nagumo points out that the odds aren't in their favor, but Cam insists that it is the only way to enjoy their safety. Shia looks downcast after hearing her father's plans, so Nagumo asks her to cheer up and announces that he will help the beastmen. He tells them that if they want the Emperor to listen to them, they should engage him on his turf and subdue his family, friends, and subordinates while he watches. After that, they should make their demands, and if he refuses to give in, they should prove that they are not a bunch of spineless cowards by shedding some blood. This motivates the beastmen, and they all jump for joy, knowing that with Nagumo on their side, they will be a force to be reckoned with. The following day, Lily meets with the Emperor, and they discussed everything that happened in the Highlight Kingdom when the demons attacked. They'd also discussed Nagumo fulfilling his role as an overpowered MC. When Lily notices the Emperor is starting to take an interest in Nagumo, she warns that Nagumo is the type to spite in the face of authority. He hums in response and asks what her intentions are for visiting him, and she tells him that she came because her kingdom needs aid from his empire. The Emperor reviews her proposal and agrees to send his troops to her kingdom, as he believes they need each other. However, to show the world that they are now allies, Luttley has to marry his Dutchabag's son. With the issue of alliance out of the way, the Emperor talks about the 4 idiots who attacked his soldiers the night before. Lily keeps her face expressionless, even though internally, she's trying to understand why Amanogawa and the others did something so stupid. The Emperor seems to think she knows who the masked individuals are, so he keeps talking about them and even asks where Amanogawa is. Lily says he accompanied Nagumo to conquer the Great Labyrinth, even though she could bet her money that they were still in the city. This makes the Emperor tell her about the rabbit beastmen who broke out of prison while the four masked individuals engaged as soldiers. He then tries to make Lily slip up and admit that Nagumo and Amanogawa had something to do with the incident, but Lily doesn't give him what he's looking for. The next moment, a guard knocks on the door and informs Lily that Amanogawa and the others are there to see her, causing her to panic. A soldier who introduces himself as Grid is sent to meet the group outside, and when he sees Shia, he asks if she remembers him. Shia takes a good look at the man and immediately recognizes him as one of the soldiers who attacked her clan after they were chased out of the forest. The man then approaches her and brags about how her kin fetched the Empire's good money when they were sold. When he tells her that she would also fetch a good price in the slave market, Shia gives him a look of disdain. This annoys him, so he tells her not to think she is the next best thing after the iPhone 16 just because she's now rolling with the hero's party. Still, Shia doesn't regard him as something other than an eyesore, so he turns her face away in disgust. Her blatant disregard for him makes him ask Amanogawa to hand her over to him, promising he will give him a better replacement. Nagumo is the one who responds to the egotistical fool, and he tells him to know his place and do the job he was sent to do. The deadly glare he sends Grid is enough to make him back down and grant them access to the castle to see Lily. When they are before Lily, she scolds Nagumo for the previous night's events as she knows he's the mastermind, and tells him his balls must be made of premium steel for him to show up at the castle after what he did. Nagumo asks her not to get worked up over something so little, so she asks why they aren't in the Great Labyrinth as they ought to be. Nagumo assures her that everything will be revealed that night and tells her to tell the Emperor that they finished their quest early and decided to join her if he questions their presence. This only makes Lily more agitated, and she demands to know what Nagumo is plotting, but he refuses to say anything. They are soon interrupted by a knock on the door and are informed that the Emperor has requested an audience with them. A few minutes later, they stand before the Emperor, and to everyone's surprise, Nagumo greets and speaks to the man with respect. The Emperor laughs and tells him that he's heard tales of his insolence from Lily, so he doesn't have to pretend that he has respect for him. After inviting them to join in for tea, the Emperor asks Nagumo if he truly has no intention of sharing the artifacts he creates with the Empire or Lily's kingdom. Nagumo says yes, so the man asks what right he has to monopolize such power. In response, Nagumo tells him to go hug an electric fence if he has a problem with it, shocking everyone with his rudeness. Outside the room, the Emperor's men prepare to attack Nagumo, but he already sensed their presence. The Emperor notices this and laughs out loud before ordering his men to stand down as he knows Nagumo would wipe the floor with their butts without even breaking a sweat. He then leaves his throne and sits in front of Nagumo before asking if he could share one of his harem girls with him. Nagumo says he will happily give him Tio, and instead of getting offended, the cultured masochist comments on how wonderful his lack of care for her it is. The Emperor tells him he doesn't want expired goods and says he wants Shia, because he has a furry addiction. When Nagumo refuses, he tries to convince him to change his mind by telling him he has a few female beastmen he could give him as a replacement. Still, Nagumo says no, so the Emperor talks about the rabbit beastmen who broke out of his prison the previous night and asks Nagumo if he knows anything about them. Nagumo says he doesn't, but the Emperor doesn't relent and tries to trick him into admitting his involvement with the prison break. Nagumo simply acts like the man speaks a different language and sips his tea, so the Emperor asks what it will take for Nagumo to ally with the Empire. Nagumo tells him that if he provides a way back to his original world, he will ensure that he cheers for the Empire when he gets home. This pisses the man off, and he calls Nagumo an insufferable brat before he is interrupted by a soldier who whispers something in his ear. He then gets up, and as he exits the room, invites the group to Lily's engagement party happening that night. Everyone is surprised to learn that Lily is marrying for political reasons, and Amanogawa tries to convince her to change her mind. Lily refuses and explains that she's doing it for her people who need the Empire's protection. Not wanting to be involved in their argument, Nagumo attempts to leave with his girls, but Amanogawa calls out to him. He asks Nagumo to intervene, but Nagumo says there's nothing he can do and reminds Amanogawa that they have a mission to complete. Later, while Lily tries on her dress for the party, Prince Bias walks in and orders the maids to leave. Lily dismisses her retainers so she can speak to Bias, but the moment they are alone, he roughly grabs one of her plots and pushes her to the floor. As the disgusting cad lays on top of her, He tells her that screaming for help isn't going to stop him from intruding into her chamber of secrets. Lily weakly questions his reason for attempting to assault her, and he tells her it is because he wants to break her spirit and force her to be compliant with him. He then rips the top of her dress, but before he can proceed with his unholy intentions, a metal spider injects something into his neck. After he faints, Lily watches the spider return to the ceiling and realizes that Nagumo is the one who sent it. Later, Nagumo and the girls are elegantly dressed and make their way to the ballroom for the party, to await the chaos that is to come. Meanwhile, outside the castle, the rabbit beastmen dressed as ninjas from the Hidden Leaf Village take out the guards one by one. Once the soldiers are taken care of, Cam informs Nagumo through one of his metal spiders that it is time. Inside the ballroom, Nagumo receives reports from each group that their targets have been secured and they will soon move in to take the ballroom. Just then, Lily shows up with Prince Bias, but everyone begins to murmur when they see that she's dressed in black and the prince looks uncomfortable. Lily ignores the murmurs and walks around the room conversing politely with those she recognized. Her behavior makes Kaori voice her concern for Lily, so Nagumo tells her that Lily's behavior was acceptable because of what happened earlier. Shizuku overhears this and assumes Nagumo is responsible, so she demands to know what he did to Lily. Nagumo defends himself and then explains that he saved Lily from getting assaulted by the incel brain degenerate, rating himself as a prince, which surprises them. Kaori and Shizuku try to find out more about what happened to Lily, but Nagumo refuses to offer more explanations and asks Yui to dance with him. After his dance with Yui, Lily approaches him and asks him to dance, so Yui excuses them and joins the others at the side. During their dance, Lily thanks him for saving her, and he asks if she dressed like the Black Widow to spite the prince for what he did to her. Instead of answering the question, Lily rests her head on his chest and expresses embarrassment at him seeing her in a vulnerable state. Nagumo points out that her closeness to him made the prince jealous, and she tells him she doesn't care as she is now the crown princess. She then hugs Nagumo and asks if he will save her from her fate, as the prince's wife that she asks him to. Nagumo assures her that she will be saved because the empire will fall that night, which confuses Lily. As they conclude their dance, Nagumo and the others receive information that all the rabbit beast men are in position. She leaves to join her clan members in executing their plans while Nagumo and the others remain in the ballroom. The emperor takes the stage a few moments later, and as he addresses the crowd,
I don't know what I'm doing!
he easily defends himself against the attack. Hoping to get a clearer view of what is happening around him, the emperor illuminates the room using magic. This allows him to pinpoint the location of the archers, so he sets up a wind wall and then counterattacks them with a fireball. With the archers down, the other rabbits engage the emperor in a one-on-one fight, but he defeats them all except Cam, who matches his attacks with his. Outside, Grid and a few soldiers make their way to the ballroom, but they encounter Shia, who beats them up. And sends Grid flying toward the moon as payback for what he did to her people. Back in the ballroom, Cam is exhausted from fighting the emperor, but the man staggers before he can deliver the final blow. This is when Cam reveals that he used a paralysis poison on him while they fought. The next moment, the emperor's knees and shoulders are hit with arrows, and as he falls to the floor in pain, Cam pours the antidote on his face. A light illuminates the stage, allowing the people to see what is happening. Cam tells the emperor that the lives of everyone in the castle depend on his words, and then places a necklace of vows on his neck. He says it will force him to keep his promise to them with his life. He also adds that all those connected to the emperor will wear the necklace, and if he fails to keep his promise, they will all die. The emperor asks what promises he has to make, and Cam lists 4 things.
First of all, your Jordans are completely fake. Second, you raise your chin, you have absolutely no maidens. And finally, you, my friend, haven't even thought about buying Spotify Premium.
First, he will release all beastmen. Second, he will not attack the forest of trees. Third, he will abolish slavery and stop the persecution of all beastmen. And lastly, he will write all those into law and obey them. When Cam finishes, the emperor tells him that he has to be high on crack if he truly believes he will agree to his terms. Cam says he's allowed to refuse but warns him that until he agrees to his terms, people will keep dying. To prove his point, he gives the order for a soldier to be executed, but that doesn't shake the Emperor's resolve. Next, Cam orders the prince to be beheaded, and still the Emperor refuses to change his mind. Having no choice, Cam orders the bombing of the military barracks along with the soldiers still inside them. Realizing that if he doesn't agree to Cam's terms, he will lose most of his military forces and resources, the Emperor agrees to take the vow. After he takes the vows, Cam leaves but contacts Nagumo and thanks him for helping them achieve their goal. Nagumo tells him they might have won the battle, but reminds him that the war isn't over yet. Cam says he and his tribe understand the consequences of their actions. However, they are glad that they showed the Empire that they are not as weak and defenseless as they once believed. A few days later, Nagumo flies the rabbits and the freed beastmen to Verbergen. On the way, Cam informs Nagumo and the others that the Halia tribe wasn't welcomed in Verbergen. He explains that the Council of Elders had deemed them sinners and condemned them to death before. However, because of their affiliation with Nagumo, the execution order was revoked. He advises Lily to speak to Ulfric, one of the elders, if she needs to discuss negotiations between her kingdom and the Beastman nation. As the journey continues, the Emperor, who accompanied them, asks Nagumo to provide him with an aircraft, but Nagumo refuses. The Emperor offers to give him his daughter in exchange for the ship, but this annoys the girls and they threaten the old geezer. When Lily also voices her disapproval, the Emperor thinks it's because she has a thing for emotionally unavailable bad boys like Nagumo, so he mentions that he saw how close the two were when they danced at her engagement party. Lily quickly denies any romantic relationship between her and Nagumo, and Nagumo backs her up, saying he doesn't do human girls. He also says it's inappropriate for him to have relations with Lily when she is pretty much a married woman. The Emperor then informs him that Lily's engagement is off since they could die at any moment because of the vow he made. He also says that with the way things are right now in the Empire, they are the ones who need help from Lily. This makes Amenogawa happy as he can now try to raise Lily up and convince her that his mini Excalibur is as great as his real sword. While the girls congratulate Lily, the Emperor tells Nagumo that if he wants to shoot his shot at Lily, he can help him. Nagumo says he doesn't need a wingman before hugging Yue and Shia to his side and adding that he's already committed. That night, Nagumo's ship lands in Verbergen, and the released slaves are reunited with their family. Since most of the forest was damaged by the Imperial soldiers, Nagumo asks Kaori to repair with her magic. When she finishes, which isn't something most women do, the beastmen begin to worship her as they now see her as a goddess and the protector of their nation. After she manages to convince them that she isn't the reincarnation of the goddess Artemis, Ulfric thanks Nagumo for bringing his granddaughter and the other beastmen home. Nagumo tells him not to thank him as it was the Halia tribe who saved everyone. Ulfric says he heard the story from the freed slaves, however he can't help but doubt the story since the rabbits are known to be the weakest beastmen. This makes Cam and the Halias stand before Ulfric and the beastmen. Cam then talks about how the beastmen have been oppressed and humiliated. He tells them they might have regained their freedom, but that doesn't mean they are truly free from those who wish to harm them. He emphasizes the importance of standing up for oneself and says if they want to protect themselves and their loved ones, they have to learn to fight. Cam's words affect the beastmen, and he tells them that if they are willing to become warriors, they can join hands with his tribe. Later, Nagumo and the others meet with the Council of Elders, who aren't happy to see the Emperor. When one of the elders voices his displeasure, the Emperor tells him to go suck a lollipop, which annoys him. Ulfric tries to intervene and tells the Emperor to be a bit more respectful. But the Emperor says if they have an issue with his attitude, they can try and force him to obey them. That is assuming they are as strong as the Halia tribe, who happen to be the only beastmen he respects because they put their lives on the line for what they wanted. Eventually, Nagumo gets tired of listening to the Emperor yapping, so he opens a portal to the Empire and tosses the man through it like a piece of trash. He then asks Cam to take him and the girls to his village so they can rest, but Ulfric insists that they stay at the Sea of Trees instead. After Nagumo agrees and retakes his seat, the elders address Cam and his tribe. They inform them that because they freed the enslaved beastmen and returned them home, they have agreed to let them return to Verbergen. Ulfric also invites Cam to join the Council of Elders, but Cam declines the invitation. He tells the elders not to confuse their actions as heroism because they were only fighting for the future of rabbit beastmen, and says they will not hesitate to turn their blades on them should they do anything to harm Nagumo. The elders are shocked after hearing this, but Cam and the others seem pleased with themselves. Sometime later, Cam asks Nagumo to accompany him somewhere, but when they get there, Cam pulls an avatar. Shia is there, and she realizes that her old man left to give her time alone with Nagumo. Nagumo asks Shia if the tree they are standing before is her mother, and she explains that her mother is buried beneath the tree. She tells Nagumo about her mother, and how she wanted to become a hero and protect her family instead of running and hiding all the time. After her story, she introduces Nagumo to her mother, and Nagumo thanks her mother for birthing her. He says his life in US had become bright and colorful since they met Shia, and he was grateful to have met her. His words bring Shia to tears, and she tells him she wants to thank him for everything he's done for her. She hugs his side and asks what he wants her to do to make him happy, and he tells her to continue being the cheerleader of their group. The next day, the group heads to the Great Labyrinth. After fighting a few monsters, Amanogawa and his party are excited to discover what kind of magic they can learn after conquering the labyrinth. A few hours before they headed to the labyrinth, Nagumo tossed Lely through a portal back to her kingdom, and the poor princess landed on the dining table, shocking everyone. Later, Aiko and Yuka speak to her, and she tells them everything that happened while she was away. She also complains about Nagumo and how everything he does puts her in a difficult situation. Aiko and Yuka try to calm her down, but she ignores them and keeps complaining. Meanwhile, Nagumo and the others stand before the great tree and Nagumo asks Cam and the rabbits to leave. After they leave, he activates the stone slab which tells them what they have to do to complete the labyrinth. Nagumo deduces that we'll use proofs other than the ones for the last labyrinth. He then follows the instructions which further activates the slab and produces a symbol on the great tree. Yua uses restoration magic on the tree, which brings it back to life before it opens up to let them pass through. The group finds themselves in a forest, and after confirming that they are all together, Amanogawa offers to take the lead. However, before they can move from that place, Nagumo traps Yue, Tio, and Sakagami, and then points his gun at Yui's head. His action surprises everyone and they ask if he's finally gone crazy. Nagumo ignores their questions and asks Yui who she is and what she's done with the real Yui. Yui doesn't respond, so he shoots her shoulder to confirm his suspicion, and when she doesn't react, he blows her head off her body. He does the same to the fake Taio and Ryutaro, and they turn into clay. A worried Shia asks where their real friends are, and Nagumo explains that they were probably teleported to another location. Shizuku asks how he knew they were fakes, and he says he just knew that Yui wasn't Yui when he looked at her. As they begin exploring the forest like Dora, they encounter some flying bugs which they spend a few minutes fighting. When all the bugs were dead, the group sat down to catch their breath, but they were approached by the most hideous goblin ever. Amanogawa charges at the goblin, but Nagumo kicks him out of the way before he can strike it. From his landing position, Amanogawa questions Nagumo's actions, and Nagumo explains that the goblin isn't a monster. To everyone's surprise, he addresses the goblin as Yua, and it starts trying to communicate with him. Since Nagumo is a pro at charades, he understands what she's trying to say. According to Yui, after they teleported inside the great tree, she was transformed, lost all her equipment, and discovered she couldn't use her magic. Nagumo tells her not to worry as her transformation is a part of the challenge. He asks Kaori to try changing Yua back with restoration magic, but it doesn't work, so he hands Yua a device to communicate with everyone. As they continue on their way, they find Taio and Ryutaro, who have also been transformed. While Amanogawa and the others fight a monster, Tio tells Nagumo that the labyrinth is trying to test their bond. Nagumo recalls the stone slab had something about bonds written on it, and Tio says it's probably because their relationships will be tested as they tackle the labyrinth. She lists the things that have happened since they entered the labyrinth, pointing out that those were all tests. The first was recognizing the imposter among them, and the second was accepting their friends despite their appearance. Keeping this thought in the back of his mind, Nagumo finishes off the monster the others were fighting by blowing it up. After the fire dies down, another passage opens up, so the group enters it and is teleported. Nagumo wakes up in his bedroom in Japan, but instead of getting up to prepare for school, he turns off his alarm and goes back to bed. Yuit comes in a few minutes later and asks him to get up or else she'd have her wicked way with him, so he does. When they arrive at school later, Shia excitedly hugs Nagumo from behind, so he tries to pry her off him as he tells her that Yui is starting to get jealous. Shia refuses to let go of him, so Yui grabs Nagumo's second arm, and as he stares at both girls, he wonders how he ended up in a situation where two girls constantly fight over him. Suddenly, a thought enters his head, and he wonders if Shia has always worn a hairband. Before he can say anything about it, the girls tell him that they will be late for class, and as they start walking away, Nagumo starts feeling like something is off. He still feels that way when they get to class and keeps pondering on it, not realizing that Kaori is speaking to him. When she finally catches his attention, he apologizes for spacing out. Kaori tells him not to worry, but she's soon interrupted by Yui, who tells her to stop clinging to her man. Kaori stands to face Yui, and as both girls exchange false pleasantries, Tia walks in. She's their class teacher, but from how she's dressed and her behavior, it's obvious the last thing she will teach them is anything academic. As Nagumo watches her shameless display of indecency, he wonders out loud when she'll get fired. His words surprise him, and he starts wondering why saying them felt so natural. After school, he walks with Yui and Shia to pick Miu up from her kindergarten, as he has to watch her until Remia gets off work. On the way home, they come across some thugs trying to rob a woman, and Nagumo instinctively reaches for his gun. However, he doesn't have one and starts wondering why he attempted to pull one out in the first place. She approaches the thugs and beats them up in the blink of an eye, making Mia praise her. As the girls converse, Nagumo stares at his empty hand and suddenly hears a voice telling him to wake up. That night, Yui enters Nagumo's room and finds him sitting on the bed, so she gets on the bed and hugs him from behind. She tells Nagumo not to worry about anything, as she will always be with him and make him happy. Instead of feeling happy about this, Nagumo feels empty and wonders why he isn't happy about living his ideal life with Yui. Just then, he hears the voice again, and this time he's making a promise to protect Yui, while she protects him. This makes Nagumo remember the day he made that promise to Yui at the bottom of the abyss, so he gets up and punches his face for forgetting that promise. Yui tries to reach out to him, but he slaps her hand away, so she questions why he's rejecting her. Nagumo says it's because she's not his Yui, but Yui argues that she's the embodiment of his ideals, which pisses him off. He tells her not to delude herself into thinking he wants to spend his life with a puppet, and as he says this, he enters the Super Saiyan mode and reverts to his true self. Using Limit Break, he shatters the false reality, and the fake Yui congratulates him for passing the test. She tells him that for one to truly be happy, they have to work hard for the things they have before disappearing in a ball of light. When Nagumo opens his eyes next, he's in Dracula's coffin, and when he gets out of it, he sees that the others are asleep in matching coffins. After confirming that they are all still alive, he sits next to Yui's coffin and talks to her, hoping she will hear his voice and wake up. The next moment, the magic keeping her in a sleep-like state deactivates, so Nagumo picks her up. When Yui opens her eyes and sees Nagumo, she asks him if he's the real Nagumo, and he tells her that he is. Yui hugs him, and the two have a moment as she tells him about her dream, completely unaware that Shia has awoken. Just before they kiss, Shia gains their attention by pretending to cough, but Nagumo isn't happy about it. Shia laments her insignificance to the two and says nobody wants her even though she worked hard to wake up to reality like Madara said. Nagumo and Yui touch her ears to calm her down and then ask what she dreamt about. Shia tells them that in her dream, she met Navimo before her family was hunted down and they'd all lived together. She says she never had to lift a finger and was always protected by him. However, sitting pretty while being protected didn't sit right with her, so she chose to fight by his side. This decision was what helped her return to the real world. After Shia concludes her story, Nagumo hugs her and tells her he's happy she's back. At that moment, another coffin lights up and Tio emerges, complaining about how her master's punishments weren't so weak. When she notices Nagumo and the girls staring at her with unimpressed faces, she happily approaches them. However, she stops when Nagumo keeps staring at her and asks if he's suddenly fallen in love with her beauty. Nagumo approaches her and begins rubbing her head before telling her that he's glad that the Queen of Culturedness has returned to them. Just then, Kaori jerks awake and begins mumbling something incoherent, so Nagumo asks if it relates to her dream. Kaori stutters as she tries to respond, but eventually gives up and hides her face when it begins to take on the shade of a fire truck. After she calms down, a group decides to wait for Amanogawa and the others to wake up. They wait for a few hours, and when they see that they aren't waking up, Nagumo decides it's time to force them awake. Just as he stands, Shizuku wakes up, and when they go to check on her, she reacts strangely when she sees Nagumo. They deduce it has something to do with her dream, but Shizuku refuses to disclose what she dreams about. Nagumo then instructs Kaori to wake the remaining three, so she uses magic on them. When they open their eyes, they seem out of it, but Nagumo tells them they don't have time to dwell on what happened in their various dreams. Since everyone is awake, the center of the room lights up, and the group is teleported to another location. As they survey the area, it suddenly starts to rain, but they soon realize it isn't water falling in them, and Yui creates a barrier. From inside the barrier, they notice slimes moving towards them, causing Nagumo to wonder if he hadn't detected them because they can mask their aura like Rima-Ru. The slimes attack the group from beneath their feet. Every time they destroy them, they get covered in sticky goo. Amano, Gawa, and Ryutaro try not to stare at the girls because their clothes are see-through, but Nagumo is unaffected and plans to wipe their memories later since they also stare at Yui. He instructs Yui to strengthen the barrier and then uses his flamethrowers to incinerate all the slimes. When Yui drops the barrier, he notices she is acting strangely and asks what the problem is. When she doesn't respond, he looks around and sees the others are the same way. The next moment, Yui pulls on his clothes and tells him that she badly needs his hard tool. Shocked by her boldness, Nagumo remains frozen in place until he feels Shia gripping his leg. Kaori isn't far behind, and both girls look like they need to be clapped pronto. Immediately, he looks around and sees that Ryutaro is about to make Suzu a woman, while Shizuku struggles to remain sane. This makes him realize that the slimes are a sort of aphrodisiac, so he ties everyone up except Tayo, who seems to be unaffected. Tayo explains that the aphrodisiac causes extreme pleasure and blocks them from using their magic. However, it is purely a psychological effect, not a physical effect, so she predicts they will overcome it with time. Nagumo asks why she isn't affected even though she was completely covered in slime during the fight. Tayo says she's affected, however, it is nothing compared to the pleasure she has received from the pain he's dealt to her in the past. Nagumo commends her for being so cultured that things like this don't affect her. However, he tells her to stay as far away from him as possible because he doesn't trust that she wouldn't try to milk his pool. His obvious disgust at the idea makes Tayo wiggle in pleasure, but as always, he ignores her. He then speaks to Yui, Shia, and Kaori to confirm that their minds aren't completely tuned to the adult channel. The girls assure him they are fine, but he doubts their words and offers them some ambrosia. They reject it and reassure him that they are fine without it. A little while later, everyone is back on their feet and they try to figure out which way to go. Shia's ears pick up some sounds, so she approaches the area to investigate what it is. Using body strengthening, she enhances her vision but regrets the decision immediately. Nagumo notices she's vibrating like a washing machine, so he approaches her to see what the problem is. And that is when he discovers the ground is covered in roaches. Immediately, he drags Shio away, causing the others to ask what has them so rattled. Nagumo tells them it's because something worse than the devil was there and then uses his projector to show it to them. This makes them complain as the sight is disgusting, and Kaori begs him to incinerate them. Nagumo says it wouldn't work because roaches have more lives than cats and can survive anything. Suddenly, the roaches start flying towards them, so Suzu creates a barrier to shield them. Nagumo instructs Yui to put defenses on top of the barrier to support it, so she does. This makes the roaches move away. However, they merge into a large ball and construct a magic circle. When the circle activates, life-size roaches emerge from it, but before Nagumo can start gunning them down, the circle produces a bright light. After the light disappears, Nagumo and Yui express hatred for one another. They soon start arguing, causing the others to try and intervene. However, they all seem to say the opposite of what they intended. Nagumo quickly deduces that the light had flipped their emotions, and the stronger the original emotion, the stronger the flipped emotion is. Tio says the new test is trying to see if they can trust themselves despite their bad emotions. This makes the group stare at the roaches, but the longer they stare, the more they find the disgusting bugs cute. Despite this, they are prepared to squash them, so Nagumo and Yui fly off to destroy the bugs. Suzu gets distracted by the bugs and drops the barrier, so Tio uses a fire spell to ward off the roaches as she screams at everyone to get their acts together. When her magic wears off, she notices that most of the roaches have moved to where Nagumo and Yui are. The life-sized ones begin approaching the group, so they push their emotions aside and begin fighting them. At some point, Kaori starts to feel inadequate when she sees how well Chia handles the fight. Tio notices this and encourages her not to feel that way, saying she worked very hard to gain the powers that she has now. She tells her to hold her head high and be proud instead of comparing herself to Chia. She also says a few other things that make sense, so Kaori questions her. Tio confirms that she's saying all those things because her emotions are flipped. However, she admits that every word is true. She promises to protect Kaori, but Kaori tells her not to worry. Just then, Kaori spots a roach man approaching Shizuku, so she rushes over and slices it in half before helping Shizuku to her feet. Both girls then agree to watch each other's backs, and as the fight continues, Suzu remakes her barrier. On the other side, Nagumo and Yue continue fighting the roaches using guns and magic. Despite the hatred they feel for one another, they still help each other out. Eventually, they join forces, and even though they work like a well-oiled machine, the number of roaches doesn't reduce. Nagumo realizes that until they destroy the source, they will not win, so he traps the roaches inside a berry with him and Yui. He then holds Yue from behind, and as he shares his power with her, Yui activates a spell called Divine Purgatory and erases all the roaches from existence. This also destroys the source controlling the roaches, and as Nagumo holds Yui in his hands, she replenishes her strength by drinking his blood. After that, they join the others, and as Shia starts talking about how Tio acted cool during the fight, a cluster of vines drops down before them. This opens up, and after they walk through it, they find themselves on a platform in a forest. A Monogawa points at a large tree, and Tio says it's the top of the great tree, so they approach it. At the foot of the tree is another stone slab, but nothing appears on it. The next moment, a part of the tree starts moving, and eventually morphs into a woman. The woman congratulates them on completing her labyrinth and apologizes for putting them through such difficult trials. She then asks if they are aware of their relationship with the gods and the tragedies of the past. The group doesn't respond, but she knows they know. So she explains that she put them through those trials to confirm how strong their bond is. She tells them that she has bestowed evolution magic on them, which allows them to enhance their powers by one level. It also allows the evolution of all magic, and when they are combined, they will become concept magic, a form of magic that can implement any concepts in that world. She tells them that the concept magic is hard to learn even if they gain knowledge of all the ancient magic. However, she will give them one of the 3 concept magics she and the other liberators have created. After she says this, the stone slab opens and Nagumo retrieves what she calls the compass of eternal paths. She explains that the compass guides its user in the direction of the thing they desire the most, even if that thing is another world. She also says that if they acquire all the ancient magic and their desire is backed by their strong will, they can travel anywhere. After saying all this, she returns to being a part of the tree, and Nagumo asks Yui if she can use evolution magic to power up spatial magic to travel to another world, to which Yui responds no. Feeling a bit discouraged, he says all they need is one more ancient magic, and once they get it, they will be set. When he walks away from her, Amanogawa asks Nagumo if they can truly get home, and he says they can since the compass will show them the way. He assures Suzu that once he's figured out the way home, he'll take them all with him, and she thanks him. He then bluntly states that he knows everyone except Shizuku failed to gain the ancient magic because they failed the test. This surprises them, as they had hoped he would notice. Nagumo tells them not to worry and proposes that they return to Verbergen because he's tired and wants Yui to heal him. When he turns to walk away, Kaori catches a glimpse of the old Nagumo and is momentarily stunned. Later, after they return to Verbergen, Ulfric's granddaughter, Altina, waits on Nagumo during dinner. Her continued fussing over him makes Shia angry, so she gets up and slaps Altina, shocking everyone. They all know that Altina is a princess and become worried that Shia will get in trouble, but Tio points out that Altina seems happy despite being slapped. Shia scolds Altina for shamelessly being all over Nagumo like a dog in heat, but Altina ignores her words and says she's the first person to ever hit her. When she starts wailing in pleasure, Tio becomes excited as she feels she has finally met a fellow pain freak. Shia starts complaining about Altina's behavior, so Nagumo tells her to relax and pulls her to him by the waist. He tells her not to worry as she and Yua are the only ones he cares about, and then explains that everything Altina did was to get her attention and not his, which surprises her. When she turns to look at Altina, the girl is giving her a mesmerized look, and when Shia starts to question her. She admits that what Nagumo said is true. She also accidentally says she wants Shia to do unspeakable things to her, causing Shia to back away and call her a cultured freak. Altina begs Shia not to get the wrong idea and explains that she only wants to be friends with her. Shia tells her that she could have just asked her to be her friend instead of making her jealous by clinging to Nagumo. This encourages Altina, so she asks Shia to be her friend and Shia agrees, making her happy. However, she tells Shia to treat her like her favorite toy, so Shia pushes her away, disgusted by her words. After the girls leave, Kaori asks Nagumo if his earlier display of affection towards Shia meant that he saw her as someone special. Nagumo says yes and admits that he doesn't know when or how it happened. This admission makes Kaori tell Nagumo to brace himself because she's going to work hard to become special to him too. Yue throws her spoon in Kaori's face and tells her that she will never accept her as one of Nagumo's women. The two soon start fighting, but no one tries to stop them. Tio then tries to shoot her shot at Nagumo, but he bluntly tells her he'd rather make out with Shrek than date her, which makes her happy. Later in the evening, Shia goes to meet Nagumo while he is crafting bullets and asks if he meant what he said earlier. Nagumo confirms that it was, and after declaring that he doesn't want anyone else to have her, he kisses her. The moment would have been wonderful if Shia was so shocked and her nosy friends didn't interrupt them. Shia is shocked when she sees them, but Nagumo remains calm and says they don't have to hide their relationship. Tio suddenly appears behind Shia and starts asking how her kiss with Nagumo feels, causing the poor girl to freak out. Thankfully, Yue saves her from the annoying dragon by blasting Teo with an electrifying spell, which sends her flying across the garden. Feeling grateful, Shia runs into Yue's arms and starts sobbing as she tells her how Nagumo finally acknowledged her as his special person. Kaori goes to help Teo, and the cultured dragon tells her that they have to up their game if they also want to be promoted in Nagumo's unofficial harem. Eventually, Nagumo asks why they were all outside and Suzu says they came to speak to him. She pleads with him to take her along with him to the next labyrinth as she wants to get stronger before she has to face Eri again. She tells Nagumo that she intends to go to the demon realm and convince Eri to return to them. Amanogawa also pleads with Nagumo to take him along and says since he's the one Eri wants, he believes he can talk no Jutsuber into returning. He also admits that he wants to gain more power by completing the labyrinth. His words prompt Ryutaro and Shizuku to say they also want to clear the labyrinth with Nagumo. Nagumo agrees to let them come but tells Suzu that if Eri returns and he senses malice from her, he will put a bullet in her skull. After everyone leaves, Nagumo stands in front of the fountain, wondering if he's gone soft. Yue comes to stand beside him and reassures him that no matter what happens, she will always be at his side because they are stronger together. Shia, Kaori, and Tio also show up and remind Nagumo that he is strong, but with them at his side he is unstoppable. Nagumo doesn't say anything about their declaration, but after he returns his attention to the fountain, he says that after they clear the last labyrinth they will go pick Miu up. Meanwhile, in the demon realm, Fried observes with disgust as the reanimated hybrid bodies of dead beastmen and humans train. These hybrids possess physical strength that neither humans nor beastmen alike don't have, and the cherry on the icing is that they can use magic, unlike regular beastmen. Eri soon walks up to him and tells him to be more appreciative of her work, so he admits that they are okay for a fighting force. When she comes to stand beside him, she notices that a few of her soldiers are missing, and Fried tells her that they went to pick up the guests. This information makes Eri grin, and she says she can't wait to see them. At the same time in the human realm, Yuk, Milady, Miu, Remia, and those around them notice something shiny in the sky. A few days later, Nagumo interrupts Shizuku's training and commends her for continuing her training even though they had just completed a labyrinth a few days ago. After he hands her a towel to dry her sweat, Shizuku admits she came out to train because she couldn't sleep. Nagumo points out that something is off about her and asks how she's feeling, to which she responds that she's fine. Satisfied with her answer, he approaches her, but she freaks out and backs away. Her reaction surprises Nagumo, and he tells her that he only wants to have a look at her black blade. Shizuku feels stupid for overreacting but gives Nagumo her blade and watches as he uses evolution magic to enhance it until she falls asleep. The next day, Shizuku, Suzu, Amanogawa, and Ryutaro train on top of Nagumo's ship while it's in the air, using Suzu's barrier to keep them from falling off. Inside the ship, a fascinated Shia comments on how the clouds are as thick as Nagumo's meat, So Yui explains that it's because they are in an area with a lot of snow. Kaori then asks Nagumo if the compass is working, and he tells her that it is. He also tells her how it works and says it consumes a lot of magical energy, unlike Jack Sparrow's compass. Uninterested in their conversation about the compass, Shia says she can't wait to clear the final labyrinth so she can see Mayu again. Just then, Amanogawa and the others walk in and Nagumo asks for feedback on their weapons since he did some maintenance and upgraded them. They tell him the weapons are better than before, and Nagumi says that Amanogawa's holy sword was the only one he didn't upgrade. He explains that the sword was created perfectly, so all he did was perform maintenance on it. A little while later, he informs everyone that he's going to land the ship and they will continue to the labyrinth on foot. Shia is excited as it will be her first time experiencing snow. But Tayo is the opposite, and she complains that she doesn't do well in the cold. Thankfully, after they land, Nagumo provides them with enchanted clips that stop them from being cold, so they don't have to worry about freezing to death. Shia plays with the snow, but as she lies on the ground making snow bunnies, she suddenly falls. Shizuku and Suzu are the only ones worried about her safety, but Nagumo assures them that she's fine. He then tells them that they have to go down and jumps off the cliff with Yui and Kaori following close behind. The others hesitate to jump and Tio tells them that if they are scared of jumping off a cliff, then they will never achieve the goal they set out to achieve. She gives Suzu a boost by tossing her off the cliff, and after she jumps off herself, the others follow suit. They find themselves in a cave and are soon joined by Shia, who Nagumo gives a factory reset not for being careless. They then continue on their way with Nagumo using the compass to lead them. Soon, they come across some little bunnies, which Shizuku finds very cute. However, when one of the bunnies approaches Nagumo, he stomps it to death. This causes the others to look at him like he is the devil himself and call him names, but Nagumo ignores them and continues slaughtering the bunnies. When he realizes he's the only one ruthlessly massacring rabbits, he tells them to join him. She remains frozen in shock, and the other girls don't bother moving, so Amanogawa and Ryutaro are the ones who join him. After they finish and continue moving, Nagumo tells the girls not to look so glum as the rabbits are monsters. He explains that their magic steals heat from those who embrace them, but still the girls refuse to forgive him, especially Shia since she is part rabbit, so he reassures her that she's the only rabbit he cares about, which makes her happy. As they continue walking, they reach a windy path, so Yui creates a barrier with her magic to prevent them from getting frostbite. A little while later, they arrive at another frozen cave. However, this time they encounter ice monsters that attack them. As they fight them off, Nagumo spots the gem controlling them and tries to shoot it, but it moves out of the way. Tio points out that the scenario reminds her of the monster they saw at the oasis and advises him to be cautious. Taking Tio's advice, Nagumo tells the others to consider every piece of ice as their enemy. The next moment, more ice monsters are formed, and as they move to surround the group, the monster with the gem reveals itself. Surrounded and outnumbered by ice monsters with regenerative abilities, Nagumo weighs his options, but before he concludes, Amanogawa calls to him. Nagumo understands what he wants before he speaks, so he tells him that he will handle the smaller monsters while he and his party take down the final boss. Kaori creates a path for him to approach the monster, so he charges at it and hits it with a wind strike. This affects one of its eyes, causing it to get angry and fire a powerful blast at Amanogawa in retaliation. Fortunately, Suzu uses her barrier to defend against the attack, but that doesn't stop the monster. From inside the barrier, Shizuku notices that its injured eye has regenerated, so she tells Amanogawa that they have to bring the monster down with one big strike. Amanogawa says he will use Divine Wrath against the rip-off Pokemon, and asks that they buy him time to charge up for the attack. They tell him not to worry, and the moment Suzu drops the barrier, they attack the monster. Shizuku cuts off two of its legs and Ryutaro goes One-Punch Man on its face, but it still attacks them. Shizuku leaps into the air to avoid the ice crystals the monster releases, but is almost attacked by one of the ice eagles. Thankfully, Nagumo shoots it down before it can hurt her, which surprises her because he isn't even looking in her direction. Ryutaro Hulk smashes the monster one last time before Amanogawa charges it and finishes it off with Divine Wrath. However, despite his efforts, the gem remains intact and is picked up by one of the ice eagles. Amanogawa tries to stop it, but he's too weak and has to be supported by Suzu, So Shizuku attacks it, but not before it inserts the gem into an ice wall. The next moment, all the remaining ice monsters crumple to pieces, and the wall the gem was inserted into breaks to reveal a door, which they pass through. As they walk through the new hallway filled with ice mirrors, Amanogawa suddenly stops walking and asks Ryutaro if he heard anything. Ryutaro tells him he didn't, but Amanogawa is certain he heard something and continues observing the place suspiciously. He becomes so paranoid that every sound he hears spooks him, and he keeps asking himself who's there. The others notice his strange behavior, so they stop and listen to what he has to say. He tells them that he can hear a voice, but none of them can hear it, so Ryutaro suggests that he calm down, saying he might be hearing things because he's worked up. However, Nagumo doesn't dismiss Amanogawa's claims and instructs Shia to be extra vigilant, and let him know if she hears anything. The next moment, Amanogawa starts acting strangely again and says he can hear a voice asking if he is satisfied. The others tell him they can't hear anything, and this agitates him further as he swears he can hear something. Shia tells Nagumo she's not picking up any voices other than theirs, and Nagumo confirms that he can't detect any magic. Tio is the one who explains that Amanogawa's mind is being affected by the labyrinth. Nagumo then tells everyone to be careful as they could also experience what Amanogawa is experiencing since it's the labyrinth's doing. They soon resume walking, but not long after, Amanogawa hears the voice again. This time he says it sounds familiar, but Shizuku says he might just be imagining things. However, she changes her mind when she also starts hearing a voice. But unlike Amanogawa, hers is female, and it asks her if she's going to keep looking away. Nagumo and Kaori also hear voices speaking to them, and this helps Nagumo deduce that the voices they are hearing are theirs. The only difference is that the labyrinth has twisted it to make them hear only negative things. Shizuku asks Nagumo what he heard, and he says the voice told him that there's no place in Japan for a monster like him. When he admits that deep down he doesn't believe he can go back to his old life, the others feel bad, but he doesn't act like he's affected by it. Instead, he proposes that they rest in the chamber ahead, and they agree. Somehow, Shizuku is transported to the past, when she was still in grade school, and the teacher was asking for volunteers to participate in a play. Kaori nominates Shizuku for the role of the princess, but Shizuku says she will play the knight when their classmates begin teasing her and saying she's too much of a tomboy to be a princess. Suddenly, she hears a voice in her head asking how long she will keep putting others and their happiness before herself. She then begins to see flashes of her life, where she lets people walk over her like a doormat, and always does what they want her to do. Eventually, she ends up in a dark void, and all she hears is the voice telling her that she will end up alone. When she tries to fight the voice, she sees someone who resembles a twisted version of her, and it taunts her until she wakes up in the chamber. Realizing that she'd fallen asleep, she tries to compose herself, but Suzu notices something is wrong and asks if she wants to talk about it. Shizuku says she's fine and attempts to switch topics by asking if Suzu is feeling all right. But Kaori cuts in and tells Shizuku to learn to be a bit more selfish. She also tells her that if she needs to get things off her chest, she will listen to her. The group soon continues their journey, but the voice in Amanogawa's head continues taunting him and asking if he's going to let Nagumo save him again. Frustrated, Amanogawa punches the wall, and when he looks up, his reflection smiles at him with glowing red eyes, causing him to pull out his sword. Shizuku asks him to calm down, but he says he can't because someone is smiling at him through the wall. Shizuku says he probably imagined it, which annoys him, so he asks if she would question Nagumo's sanity if he were the one who said what he said. His question makes Shizuku ask if his head is screwed on properly as she never said she doubted him, so he apologizes. When they arrive in a cave with a large door, they become suspicious but choose to move forward. Before they can cross the icy cave, large ice monsters with weapons drop down from the roof of the cave and block their path. Everyone releases a special attack to destroy the monsters, but for some reason, Amanogawa's attack changes directions and heads for Nagumo. Fortunately, he dodges it and then deflects Shizuku's attack, heading for Shia, while Yua deflects Kaori's attack, which is heading for her. Nagumo asks why they tried to attack them, and the trio swears that it wasn't intentional. When more monsters show up, Tio moves to take them out, but tells Nagumo that the labyrinth is responsible for what is happening. It seems it's trying to put them against each other, and since Amanogawa, Kaori, and Shizuku have at one point felt jealous of Nagumo, Yui, and Shia, they are the perfect pawns. Nagumo then decides to save everyone the trouble by using his bazooka to blow up the ice monsters. Unfortunately, they regenerate faster than your boyfriend can get it up. So Nagumo deduces that the only way to destroy them is for each person to take one down. After Amanogawa listens to his explanation, he sends another wind slash toward the monsters, but just like before, it changes course and heads towards Nagumo, who dodges it. The monsters continue attacking, but everyone except Nagumo, Uito, and Shia hesitate to attack as they are afraid to hit their friends. Nagumo encourages them not to be afraid, and soon after he does this, they get separated with each person facing off against a monster. Nagumo defeats his monster easily. Kaori overcomes her fear, and with Yua's help, she also defeats her monster. Shizuku opts out of using long range attacks as they just get redirected to Shia, and instead attack the monster at a close range. After she defeats it, she joins Nagumo and the others who have defeated their monster. They soon begin to tease her when they see her holding hands with Kaori, and Yui even tells her that she supports her decision to be booed up with Kaori. Their teasing is interrupted by one of Amanogawa's long range attacks, but Nagumo deflects it using his portal. He then tells the girls that Amanogawa is losing his patience, however. He predicts that he and the others will finish off their monsters in a few minutes. A few minutes later, just like Nagumo foretold, Amanogawa, Suzu, and Ryutaro defeat their monster and rejoin the group. With nothing else standing in their way, the group goes through the door, but Nagumo finds himself alone and back in the mirrored hallway. Surprisingly, he isn't fazed as he'd expected the labyrinth to play dirty tricks on them, so he goes back to the ice cave. There he stares at his reflection and pretends to be disappointed in how he looks so much like the edgelord Shizuku, and Suzu always said he looks like. The next moment, his reflection speaks up, and Nagumo smirks since he'd done what he did to lure his evil doppelganger out. The evil Nagumo commended the real Nagumo for keeping his cool, unlike Amanogawa, whose first instinct was to punch the wall. The real Nagumo tells him not to compare him to a pea-brained pretty boy like Amanogawa, and reveals that he already knows what the test is. Intrigued, the evil Nagumo asks the real Nagumo what he thinks he knows, so he explains that to conquer the labyrinth, they have to overcome the negative parts of themselves that they try to ignore. When he finishes, the evil Nagumo congratulates him for using his brain and then exits the wall. Since he's the yin to the real Nagumo's yang, his appearance is the opposite, with his hair being black, his clothes being white, and his artificial arm, eye patch, and boots being silver. When the two begin fighting, they are evenly matched since they are almost the same. However, the evil Nagumo taunts the real Nagumo and tries to break his spirit by telling him how no one would accept a stone-cold monster like him if he returned home. The real Nagumo ignores him and switches to bombs, but the evil Nagumo does the same and taunts him. When he asks the real Nagumo if he's scared of returning home and being rejected, the real Nagumo responds by asking if he never got tired of hearing himself speak. Unbothered by the obvious jab, the evil Nagumo tells him that he can pretend all he wants, but says he knows the truth. As they continue exchanging fire, the evil Nagumo says the real Nagumo doesn't truly love you, and is only clinging to her, because he knows she's the only one who won't reject him and judge him for who he has become. This makes the real Nagumo hesitate, allowing the evil one to disarm him and point his gun at his stomach. Before he can pull the trigger, the real Nagumo gets another gun and shoots his artificial arm before punching him into the wall. Still, that doesn't shut him up when he asks the real Nagumo how he can be so calm when he's facing his ugly and dirty side. The real Nagumo says it's because he keeps pushing forward even though he is changed, and even though he may never return home to the life he once had. He then points his gun at the evil one and clarifies that despite what he thinks, what he feels for Yui is love. Disappointed by his declaration, the evil one gets back up and attempts to shoot the real one, but the real one doesn't give him the chance. He kicks him back to the ground, causing the evil to ask how he is overpowering him without overcoming his fears. The real Nagumo asks what he's talking about, so the evil one explains that the test is designed in a way that he can only be defeated if Nagumo confronts and overcomes his fears. However, the real Nagumo is defying logic and overpowering him through force. The real Nagumo laughs, after which he disarms the evil one and kicks him. Still, the evil one remains on his feet and demands to know what tricks the real Nagumo is using. Nagumo says he's not using any tricks and explains that the evil one is losing because he was created with the information the labyrinth gathered when they entered it. However, he is now stronger than he was before. He then shoots off the evil one's arms, and before finishing him off, the real Nagumo tells him that he never stood a chance. With his opponent defeated, a new door appears in the room, so Nagumo heads towards it, knowing he's passed the test. Meanwhile, in a similar room, Shizuku encounters her evil self, and just like Nagumo's evil self, she's the opposite of the real one. As they fight, the real Shizuku tries to prove that she is superior, but the evil one shows her who the boss is. Aside from overpowering the real Shizuku, the evil one mocks her with the things she fears. She tells her that she has lived all her life trying to please others and depriving herself of the things she really wants. For example, she never wanted to learn sword fighting, but she did even though she only wanted to run around like all the other little girls her age. The evil one also talks about how Shizuku clung to Kaori, as though her life depended on it, because she believed Kaori would save her. The real Shizuki gets angry and tries to shut the evil one up, but she fails and gets beaten instead. As she struggles to get back up, the evil one advises her to stay down because that's the only way she'll stay alive. Shizuku refuses, and after she gets back up, she tells the evil one that she is done playing her mind games. This makes the evil Shizuku laugh, and she reminds the real Shizuku that everything she said is true. Shizuku angrily charges at her but gets kicked, and as she doubles over in pain, the evil one calls her a pathetic weakling. She advises her to accept that she's afraid and wants someone she can lean on, after which she uses a shock attack against her. She then uses her black to nick the real Shizuku's neck, causing her to become scared because she could have died if the evil one used more force. In a mocking tone, the evil Shizuku begins talking about how Nagumo saved the real Shizuku and how it made her so happy. Shizuku tries to get her to stop talking, but the evil Shizuku ignores her and says what the real Shizuku has refused to admit to herself. She is in love with Nagumo. She mocks the real Shizuku for falling in love with the same man her best friend loved and calls her a traitor. Feeling defeated, the real Shizuku falls to her knees, but that doesn't stop the evil Shizuku from continuing her taunts. She says that Shizuku's attacks went after Shia earlier because she was the easiest person to get jealous of since Nagumo recently admitted she was special to him. She then calls Shizuku a coward and kicks her in the face before kicking her into a wall. Shizuku doesn't try getting up, so the evil one approaches her and says it is time to end her miserable existence. As she raises her blade, Shizuku starts crying and begging for someone to save her. Unmoved by her tears, the evil Shizuku brings down her blade, but Nagumo catches the blade before she can cut the real Shizuku. He easily breaks off the top of the sword, so the evil Shizuku moves back. He then takes out the bottle of ambrosia he carries about and makes the real Shizuku drink it. When she's finished, she asks Nagumo if he's real and not a figment of her imagination, and he says yes. Excitedly, she places her hand on his cheek, but pulls it away and turns her face away from him. Nagumo tries to cheer her up when he sees that she is sad and tells her that she can fight her evil doppelganger since she's healed. Shizuku sadly responds that it doesn't matter because she can't win against her evil self. Nagumo assures her that she can and even says he has something to help her win. To Shizuku's surprise, he brings out the pink ranger mask she wore when broke Shia's family out of prison. Shizuku tells him to stop messing with her, but Nagumo swears that the mask will do the job. He starts talking about the improvements he made to it using evolution magic, as if they are at a tech expo. Shizuku cuts him before he can finish, and tells him that there's no way in hell she'd wear the mask. She also tells him that she doesn't need the mask to be a cheap imitation of her, and Nagumo says he knows, making her realize that he tricked her. He tells her not to forget who she is and reminds her that her opponent is only a small part of her. When he promises to stay and watch over her and protect her, Shizuku laughs and calls him cheesy. However, she asks if he will truly keep his promise and also save her if she asks him to, and he tells her that he will. Feeling encouraged, Shizuku approaches her evil self who tries to taunt her again, but doesn't get to her. Before they draw their swords, Shizuku tells the evil one that she is okay being the one everyone relies on because now she knows that there's someone she can rely on and can save her. The evil Shizuku says a few things to taunt her opponent, but none of them rattle Shizuku, so she prepares to engage her. Both girls then do the popular anime sword move, and after they move past each other, the only thing on the real Shizuku that gets cut is her hair tie, while the fake Shizuku gets cut in half and disintegrates. Shizuku puts her blade back in its scabbard, and when Nagumo approaches her to congratulate her, she falls into his arms. Shizuku uses that chance to flirt with him, and when a door opens up, she asks him to carry her. Nagumo questions her newfound boldness, and she says it's because she has decided to be honest with herself. She then asks him to make a new hair tie for her, and insists that he make it cute, so Nagumo complies. After she puts it on, she gets on his back, and as they walk out of the room, she asks what he thinks of her callous hands. He tells her they are pretty, which makes her happy, so she tells him that she can't wait to see the others. Meanwhile, in the demon realm, Freed informs Eri that it is time for them to leave and instructs her to do everything he says. At the same time, Suzu is fighting her evil self, and like Shizuku, she struggles. Her evil self taunts her with her fears and ensures that she talks about Eri, who Suzu considers her best friend. She says Suzu was delusional to believe that Eri was like her, when the truth is that deep down, she knew Eri was a psycho and could have stopped her from hurting a lot of people. Instead, she kept quiet and chose to close her eyes to the truth, all because she wanted to protect what she believed was a mutual friendship. Suzu attacks her evil self with flying ice, but she defends herself and asks Suzu what she'd do when she sees Eri again. Suzu doesn't respond, and that is when the evil Suzu notices that she's growing weakling. When she voices this out, Suzu reveals that she's learned how the test works. To the evil Suzu's surprise, the real Suzu admits that everything she said about her is true. However, unlike before, she's ready to stop running. She says that even though she doesn't know what she will do when she sees Eri again, she will still go to her. She then declares that to do that, she will defeat her evil self and get out of the labyrinth. The evil one asks her to show her what she can do, and Suzu does that by striking her fans together and blowing her to bits. Exhausted, she faints, and when she wakes up later, she is being carried by Ryutaro, who says their testing room was connected. Suzu asks him how his test was, and he tells her that he was insulted for being a weakling and pretending to be okay being second and third to Amanogawa and Nagumo. As they continue walking, they arrive at the room where Tio is fighting her evil self, and it seems that her evil self is pissed that she has stooped to the same level as the humans who once feared her. She reminds Tio that she only followed Nagumo because she believed he'd be useful in a revenge plot against the god. When she attempts to convince Tio to give in to her evil and vengeful side, Tio begins to recite some words. She also increases the intensity of her flames and pushes the flames of her evil self back, after which her eyes change. This makes the evil one realize that since they began fighting, Tio has been holding back and using her to test how strong her will is. The evil one questions how Tio can fight all the negative thoughts swimming inside her mind, and Tio says it's because she is Tio Claris, the last of her clan. After saying this, she overpowers the evil one and then approaches Suzu and Ryutaro like she is out on a stroll. She asks if they are the only ones there, and they tell her yes, which makes her lament that she wishes Nagumo had witnessed her epic battle. Do you think Yui and the others are crushing their test? Or is Amanogawa getting his butt whooped because he refuses to accept that he's jealous of Nagumo? If you want to find out what happens next, comment weakling. Don't forget to check out our page to see if your favorite anime has been recapped. See you in the next video.